You wake before the sun rises, the air inside the longhouse cool enough to prickle your skin. The wool blanket over your shoulders is heavy and rough, but it holds what little warmth the night left behind. Around you, the quiet is whole, no voices, no movement, only the soft creak of wood as the walls adjust to the cold. You push the blanket aside and set your feet down onto the packed earth floor. The chill climbs instantly from your toes up to your knees, sharp and clear. Your boots wait near the wall, stiff from the night's frost. You pull them on slowly, letting the leather warm just enough to bend. When you open the door, the cold greets you fully. It presses into your cheeks, slips into the gaps in your clothes, and fills your lungs with air that tastes faintly of salt. The sky is pale, not yet carrying the sun's full light, and the ground shimmers with a thin coat of frost. Ahead, past the low slope of frozen earth, you can see the outline of the racks. They stand in rows like tall, narrow gates, each crossbeam strung with pale fish. They hang motionless at first glance, but the closer you look, the more you see the subtle swaying, caused by the wind rolling in from the unseen shore. The scent of brine drifts across the space between you and the racks, steady and familiar. It mixes with the faint memory of the peat smoke you left behind in the hearth, an echo of warmth in a morning made entirely of cold. You begin walking, each step pressing into the frost with a muted crunch. Your breath leaves in slow clouds that dissolve into the air. Somewhere above, gulls call briefly, then fall silent again, their wings invisible in the washed-out light. By the time you reach the first rack, the world has quieted around you. The sea is still hidden beyond the last rise, but its presence is in the air, in the smell of the fish, in the way the wind tastes on your lips. You stand there a moment, letting the stillness settle into your bones before taking the next step toward the day's work. You walk slowly between the first row of racks, the frost crunching under each step. The wood is dark and weathered, its grain roughened by years of wind and salt. Pale fish hang in neat lines, each one stiff and thin, their shapes preserved by weeks of air and cold. The air here feels different, denser, holding the scent of the sea so fully that it settles in your mouth as much as your nose. You reach out to touch one. The skin is coarse, almost leathery beneath your fingers, and the flesh resists when you press against it. This one has dried long enough to be ready, yet not so long that it's brittle. You move to the next, then the next, letting your hands decide before your eyes do. The racks creak quietly above you as a light wind slides through them. Each fish sways in its own rhythm, the tails brushing faintly against the beams. From somewhere far off, you hear a low thud, perhaps a door closing, or a barrel set down on frozen ground. But here the sound is swallowed quickly. You find the one you want, a medium-sized cod, pale along the belly, darker toward the tail. It hangs at just the right height to lift without effort. You take it by the head, the cold of the flesh seeping into your hand, and slip it free of the rack's rope loop. It swings lightly in your grip, almost weightless after so many days in the wind. You tuck the fish under your arm, careful not to bend it too sharply. The chill of it presses through your sleeve, leaving a small patch of cold that spreads slowly along your skin. The path between the racks opens ahead, leading to the low bench where you'll sit to eat. The gulls call again, a little louder now, as though noticing the fish has left its place. One passes overhead, its shadow sliding briefly across the frost before vanishing. You keep walking, unhurried, the bench waiting just where it always has, its surface worn smooth by countless mornings like this. You place the fish across your lap, the head resting toward your left knee, the tail extending past your right. For a moment, you simply look at it, the ridges along the spine, the faint curl of the skin at the edges before preparing to begin. You settle the fish more firmly across your lap, the bench cool and steady beneath you. The morning has found its shape now. Thin light, small winds, the constant hush of the shore. Your hands rest on the fish for a moment, fingers spread to feel the ridges that run along its length. The skin is taut and dry, with a faint roughness that catches against the tiny lines of your fingertips. You pull your sleeve farther over one hand to keep the cold from biting too sharply, then draw the other hand bare for the work ahead. You pinch at the edge near the gill, searching for the place where the skin lifts easiest. It is a familiar search. You have done it enough times that your fingers know what your eyes need not see. The skin gives a little where the drying has pulled it away from the flesh. You press your thumb there and feel the thin snap as it loosens. The sound is small, only for you, but it marks the beginning. A knife would make this faster, and you have one, yet you hold it back for now. There is something sure in the pull of skin against skin, in the patient work of finding the seam and following it. You curl the loosened corner between thumb and forefinger and draw it slowly upward. It resists in places, then yields, coming away in a strip that is both stiff and pliant, like old parchment that has learned to bend just enough. The first strip curls as you free it, rolling into itself with a memory of the shape it once knew. You lay it on the bench beside you, where it rests lightly, not quite flat. The smell rises a little when the skin comes away salt, clean and sharp, with the faintest echo of the sea it left behind weeks ago. You breathe through it, letting the briny edge settle into your mouth. You work the edge farther, thumb tracing ahead to feel where the skin clings hardest. When you find a stubborn spot, you pause to warm your fingers beneath your arm, then return to it with a steadier hold. The skin comes away again, a longer strip this time, pale on the inside, darker on the outside, where wind and salt have hardened it. A breeze slides through the racks and turns the strip where it lies, as if considering it. Somewhere behind you, a rope creaks over wood. The sound is slow, an old complaint that never rises to anger. Your hands keep moving. You do not look up often. The work rewards attention. You follow the line of the spine, easing the skin back in small, sure pulls. In places, the flesh beneath shines firmer, with tiny crystals of salt clinging in the grooves. They scratch gently against your knuckles as you pass. You stop to flex your fingers, feeling the stiffness set into the joints. The cold is patient that way, turning knuckles wooden if you let it. You rub your thumb across your palm, then return to the fish. The next section comes away more easily, as if your hands have remembered the exact pressure needed. You slide the loosened strip down and off, leaving a smooth path that shines faintly in the weak light. The wind picks up just enough to shiver the racks, and a dry whisper passes overhead as the hanging fish brush one another. A gull glides low, eye bright, then wheels away when it sees there is nothing dropping from your bench. You keep your gaze on the work, only half aware of the shift of air across your cheek and the way your breath fogs briefly, then vanishes. You reach for the knife at last. The handle is bone, smooth with years of use, warm enough now to hold without flinching. You set the blade just beneath the edge of skin where it clings too tightly and draw it in a shallow line not cutting deep, just persuading the cling to loosen. The motion is certain and small. A thin thread of skin lifts, then the rest follows with less effort. Piece by piece, the outer layer yields. You gather the strips into a modest pile neat without thinking, set at the far corner of the bench where the wind won't snatch them. The bench itself grows faintly damp where the flesh has released what little moisture it kept. Your sleeve picks up the scent, and the scent becomes part of you, the way smoke or peat does after a night by the hearth. When enough skin has been cleared, you test the flesh with your thumb. It presses back, firm but not unwelcoming. You tear free a narrow strip and bring it to your mouth. The first pressure is always the same. Resistance, then the slow surrender of fibers separating. Salt rises fast, then steadies. A taste without surprise, and all the better for it. You chew until the texture changes under your teeth, and only then do you swallow. You rest the fish again, breathing once, twice, letting your jaw be still. The quiet is so complete that the smallest sounds take on weight, the tick of frost releasing from a beam, the distant pat of a footfall, the short, dry click when your fingernail taps the knife's spine by habit. You lift the fish and turn it, finding a new edge where the skin still clings, and begin the careful work again. There is a pace to this, and it asks nothing more than that you keep it. Strip, pause, pull, lay aside, bite, chew, swallow, breathe. The body knows it as well as the shore knows the tide. You do not seek to be done quickly. You seek only to be doing, and that is enough. Another long strip comes free. You fold it once and set it with the rest. The light shifts a little, and the pale flesh takes on a faint gold you did not notice before. You rub your thumb across it, collecting a few crumbs of salt, and bring them to your lips. They sting in a brief, familiar way, then melt back into the morning as if they had always belonged to it. You return the knife to your lap, blade resting flat, and flex your fingers once more, sleeve pulled down, warmth pressed into the knuckles, then sleeve pushed back to bare the skin for the next pull. A rhythm, nothing more, repeated until the fish is ready to give up its meat without argument. The wind thins for a breath, and the world holds still. In that stillness, you make the next small tear, feel the next small yield, and carry on. You tear another strip of flesh from the fish, smaller this time, the fibers resisting with a faint, fibrous snap. The cold air sharpens the smell as it reaches you salt first, then the dry, almost woody scent that clings to meat kept so long in the wind. You place the strip between your teeth and bite down slowly. The outer layer yields reluctantly, then parts into fine threads, each carrying the steady brine of the sea. Your jaw works in a patient rhythm. There is no rush here. The fish will not go anywhere, and the day stretches out ahead in quiet space. You chew until the fibers soften enough to press flat against your tongue. The taste deepens, not richer, not sweeter, but fuller, as if the act of chewing coaxes something hidden to the surface. You glance up briefly. The racks stand in their still rows, wood darkened from years of use, some beams slightly bowed under the weight of their cargo. The fish sway faintly in the breeze, and their shadows fall in long, thin bars across the frost-covered ground. You watch them for a few breaths before returning your eyes to the work in your hands. A small flake of salt clings to your lip. Without thinking, you run your tongue along the corner of your mouth to collect it. It melts instantly, leaving a sharp trace that fades slowly. The taste stays with you even as you pull another strip free, this one from closer to the tail where the flesh is darker and a touch denser. The tail section requires more force, so you brace the fish against your knee and pull. The fibers stretch, hold, then break with a muted snap that you feel as much as hear. You bring it to your mouth and chew again. The flavor unchanged, yet somehow more vivid now that the air has warmed the surface slightly. Somewhere above you, a gull cries, its voice sharper than the wind. You glance toward the sound, but see only the gray underside of a wing passing overhead. It leaves no mark except the brief shadow it casts across the fish in your lap. You pause to rest your jaw, holding the fish loosely while your hands warm beneath your sleeves. The cold seeps into your knuckles first, stiffening them if you do not move. You flex each finger in turn, then return to the task. Another strip tears away, and you fold it before bringing it to your mouth. The chewing brings a small quiet into your mind. The world narrows to the steady pressure of your teeth, the slow shift of texture on your tongue, and the salt that stays constant through it all. The bench beneath you holds your weight without complaint, the wood smoothed by countless mornings like this. You swallow, wipe your fingers along the edge of your sleeve, and let your gaze wander once more over the racks. They will be here tomorrow, and the day after, each one holding what the sea has given, each one waiting for hands like yours to take from them. You lift the fish again, ready for the next bite. You pause with the strip of fish halfway to your mouth, letting the air move across your face while your jaw rests. The morning has settled into that quiet space between effort and ease, where your hands know their work and your thoughts drift only as far as the next small motion. Your breath rises white, then thins and disappears. You shift your grip so the head rests more firmly against your left palm, the tail draped over your right wrist like a stiff ribbon. The salt at the corner of your lips has dried into a fine edge. You touch it with the tip of your tongue and it dissolves instantly, sharp for a heartbeat, then gone. You lower the half-torn strip and run your thumb along the fish's flank, feeling the shallow grooves where muscle once pulled and flexed beneath skin. Each groove is a path your fingers can follow without looking. You take the bite you pause for. The first pressure is familiar now, resistance, then yielding, the threads separating into something you can press flat with your tongue. The taste is unchanged, the sort of steady presence you stop questioning. You chew slowly, eyes half closed against the brightness waiting to break through the clouded sky. Across the rows, a quiet clatter rises and fades, a rope knocking against a beam, a post settling as the frost thaws by a finger's width. The sound doesn't interrupt anything. It simply marks time. You adjust your seat on the bench by a handspan, enough to bring your knees under the fish more comfortably, and the wood answers with a low, tired creak. The gulls that called earlier fly lower now. One passes close enough that you hear the soft push of air beneath its wings, a breath that isn't yours in a morning that otherwise belongs to you. It tilts its head as it glides by, the quick, bright eye measuring the chance of a dropped scrap. You keep both hands steady, and the bird continues, deciding there is nothing to be had here. A small breeze pulls through the racks, and the hanging fish answer with a gentle whisper, touch and release. Touch and release, like pages turned by a careful hand. You lift your chin into the wind and let it cool your lips, then fold another small strip out of the tail. It comes away with a quiet thread snap you feel more than hear. Your fingers have grown slick with a film you can't see, only sense. Not wet, not dry, something in between that belongs to salt and time. You rub your fingertips against the grain of the wooden bench to bring back a little grip, then wipe them down the inside of your sleeve. The wool drinks whatever you give it and carries the smell without complaint. You try the flesh higher along the back next. It is denser where the drying drew it tight around the spine. You brace the head against your palm and make a small twist with the heel of your hand that loosens the ridge. It yields just enough for you to worry a narrow seam open with your thumb. There is a quiet satisfaction in the way the seam appears. Not suddenly, just surely, as if it was always waiting for your patience. A pair of children pass between the racks, the older one's stride measured, the younger half skipping, half trotting to keep up. They don't stop or call out. The older glances once at the fish in your lap, then away again, as if confirming a known lesson. This is how the morning is done. Their footsteps fade quickly, swallowed by the ground and the wind. Enough light breaks through the clouds to put a weak sheen across the fish in your hands. The pale surface catches it, almost glows, then returns to its quiet dullness when another cloud moves over the sun. You find you prefer the dim version. It suits the measured work better. The way the bench suits your weight, the way the air suits your breath. You tear another strip longer this time, thin at one end and thick at the other, and fold it twice before bringing it to your mouth. The fold slows you down, which is the point. You chew until the effort leaves your jaw a little numb, then stop to rest it, tongue pressed flat against the roof of your mouth to hold the flavor longer. When you swallow, the warmth that follows is small but noticeable, a quiet thread unwinding from your throat into your chest. The path home is somewhere behind you, a low line of footprints that the sun will soften out of shape by afternoon. You picture the longhouse only enough to remember the hearth, its coals, not yet coaxed into flame, and then you let the picture go. There is no rushing the day to meet the fire. The day will meet it when it chooses. You set the fish crosswise on your knees and roll your shoulders once, careful not to drop what you've loosened. The heap of curled skin on the bench corner has grown without you trying to arrange it, but the pile of bones by your boot is still modest. A few pale chips, a length of spine you cracked earlier, ends that look like thin-cut reeds. When the wind stills, you can hear the faintest clink when a new piece lands. You draw one fingernail down the exposed back and feel the salt roughen under the pressure. A few crystals come away and stick to your nail. You tap them off and watch them fall, almost weightless, to the ground. You take another bite, use more tongue than teeth this time. Press and wait until it surrenders. You swallow and breathe out slow, and the breath ghosts the air like a thin veil. A quiet ache threads through your jaw, not painful, just present. You welcome it the way you welcome the cold in your hands and the weight on your lap. It proves the morning happened in the right order. You rest again, palms open, fingers slightly curled, then return to the seam you opened near the ridge. It guides you now, a clean path that asks only for steadiness. You tear a final small piece before pausing. The fish has shortened by a hand's breadth. Its balance in your hands has changed enough that you notice it without looking. You lift it, turn it once to see where the next work lies, then lay it down again with the head toward your left, the tail toward your right, the old arrangement, the one your body relies on without question. For a moment you simply sit, the morning press close. Wind and wood, salt and wool, breath and bench. The racks murmur. A gull calls far off. The sea stays out of sight, but you feel it in every small motion you make. You pick up the fish and take the next bite, knowing there will be many more, and that each one will be the same in the best possible way. You pull the fish close to your chest for a moment and breathe across your knuckles, a small tide of warmth rolling out and retreating just as quickly. The wool at your wrists is rough where it has rubbed against old salt, and when you press your hands into the sleeves, The fabric scratches pleasantly, as if reminding your skin to wake. The bench has taken your shape by now. Your weight settles without thought, and the wood answers with a quiet creak you can feel more than hear. You lower the fish again, letting the head rest along your left palm, while your right hand tests the back, searching for the next easy seam. The surface is a map your fingers have learned. Ridges where the spine ran, hollows where muscle once filled the space, edges where the skin still clings even after so much wind. You rub a circle with your thumb to warm the spot, then pinch and lift. The skin rises, thin as a hard leaf, and gives with a soft, dry sigh. You tear the strip in a slow line, laying it with the others near the corner of the bench. The little pile has grown into a loose fan of pale curls, some turning up, some down, each arguing gently with the breeze. The smell opens a touch when the skin comes free, clean, bright, a salt that lives at the back of the nose and stays there long after you swallow. Your jaw carries the story of the morning, a steady ache that isn't complaint so much as proof. You set the fish down and work your mouth in small circles, letting the muscles unknot, feeling the hinges loosen. A few breaths pass long in, longer out, and the ache slides back into the background where it knows to wait its turn. You choose a narrow piece near the tail. It needs a firmer pull, so you anchor the head against your palm and draw with the heel of your hand. The fibers hold for a heartbeat, then give all at once. The strip comes free, thin at one end, thick at the other, and you fold it once, twice, to slow yourself down. The first press of teeth is familiar resistance, then surrender as the threads unravel. You wait for the texture to soften under your tongue before you swallow. A breeze runs the length of the racks and comes back again, a careful hand moving past your face and hair. The hanging fish answer with a faint, papery whisper, a sound so soft you might have imagined it if you hadn't also felt the air cool, the damp place on your lip. A single flake of salt has lodged there. You find it and it melts away like it was meant to be found. You rest the fish across your knees crosswise and look at your hands. The tips have taken on that invisible film again, neither dry nor oily, a touch that belongs to this work and no other. You scratch your nails lightly along the grain of the bench to bring back grip. Tiny lines appear in the surface, nothing the wood hasn't seen before, then fade as your sleeve wipes them away. Across the path, a rope knocks the same post twice, then is quiet. Somewhere between the rows, someone coughs once, a brief sound swallowed by wind. You raise your head and see nothing moving, except the gulls tracing slow ovals above, white strokes against a sky that refuses to pick a color yet. The day is not in a hurry to decide anything. Neither are you. You turn the fish and pinch at the seam that runs beside the ridge you opened earlier. It yields more easily now, a kindness earned by patient work. A longer band of skin peels back with no fuss, and you carry it in your fingers to the pile, as if it might break in half if you rush. The flesh beneath shows a sheen where crystals have gathered. You brush the ridge with your thumb and feel the little points catch your skin. Then tip your thumb to your tongue to reclaim what you've stolen from the fish. You take another bite and hold it in your mouth without chewing. The salt lifts first, then the muscle asks for your attention. You answer with the slow grind of molars, until the piece spreads, thin and soft as tide-wet sand. When you swallow, a line of warmth runs down the center of you and makes a quiet place inside your chest. Your fingers cool again. You slip both hands into your sleeves and hug your forearms with the opposite palms. Heat blooms fast where skin meets skin, and you keep it with you for a few breaths before you must spend it on the work again. When you bring your hands out, the air feels colder than it did a moment ago, and then it does not. Your hands have learned the lesson and go on. A small clatter nearby draws your eye, only a loose peg grown talkative in the chill, ticking against a beam when the wind makes it. The sound is easy to live with. You return to your meal and tease free another narrow strip from higher on the back, where the flesh is denser and sweeter in a way that has nothing to do with sugar. You take your time with it, letting your jaw decide the pace, not your hunger. You look down and notice the balance has shifted. The fish is shorter by a hand's width, lighter in your palm, the tail no longer weighting the right side the way it did at dawn. The change pleases you in a quiet, ordinary way. Morning should leave evidence. You place the fish back across your lap in the old arrangement, head to the left, tail to the right, because that is how your body understands the world. Another breath of wind lifts the loose skins and presses them flat again. Your sleeve has darkened in a long, soft stain. Where you have wiped your fingers, smoke, wool, salt, and time making their own color. You rub the spot once, as if to fix it there, then leave it. Marks are honest. You try the edge by the spine with your thumbnail and feel it spring. A thin crackle answers from inside the fish a brittle note. Nothing sharp enough to worry, so you carry on, drawing a clean line that widens as you go. You pause to flex your hand, spread the fingers, close them again, then take the first bite from the ribbon you've opened. It asks for patience. You give it what it asks. When you stop to breathe, you listen. The shore is where you left it, just out of sight. The sea speaks in a voice the air translates into taste and chill. The racks murmur their book of small noises. Your breath moves in and out in long threads you can almost see. All of it holds steady. All of it allows you to keep doing this one thing. You gather the loosened skin, fold it once for neatness, and add it to the fan at the bench corner. Your bones pile has grown, 2 slender slivers, a length of spine you teased free earlier, a few bright ends that reflect what little light the morning offers. You set one more piece there, and listen for the tiny clink when it finds its place among the others. You return the fish to your hands and weigh it. Enough remains to carry you through a while yet, but not so much that the day will be all jaw and salt. You lift a fresh strip to your mouth and chew, steady as a tide. The flavor does not change, and that is what you want from it. Your breath leaves in a thin cloud and breaks against the cold, and you take the next bite as if it were the first, and as if it will not be the last. You stand for a moment, letting your knees straighten and your weight shift away from the bench. The fish stays in your hand, balanced slightly by habit. Your legs remember the cold before your mind does. The stiffness comes out as you take the first step. The air moves more freely here in the open, brushing your face and pulling at the edges of your cloak. A short walk brings you to the other bench, the one that faces the wide stretch of shoreline. It sits lower than the first, its surface worn smooth and slightly cupped from years of use. You lower yourself onto it and set the fish across your lap again, the head toward your left knee, the tail extending toward your right. From here, the horizon is a clean, unbroken line where the sea and sky meet in a muted band of gray. The sound of the waves is distant, but steady long rolls that break quietly before reaching your ears, each one trailing into silence before the next begins. Between the racks and the water lies a band of frost-stiff grass, pale and brittle, moving only when the wind bothers with it. Above that line, gulls wheel slowly, their wings cutting white arcs against the sky. You take a bite without looking down, finding the seam you left earlier and pulling from it. The strip comes free easily, and you fold it once in your palm before bringing it to your mouth. The chew is steady, the salt finding its familiar place. You let your eyes rest on the horizon, keeping the sea in your sight, but not trying to read anything from it. A figure moves in the distance, someone walking between the outer racks, their shape briefly framed by the hanging fish before disappearing again. You don't strain to follow them. Movement here is never hurried. Whatever they are doing will still be there after you've taken another bite. The wind pushes through the racks behind you, carrying the faint sound of rope sliding over wood. It joins the background hum of gulls and sea, folding itself into the rhythm of the morning. You shift your grip on the fish, taking it in both hands, the tail resting lightly across your right wrist. Your fingers have grown cooler again, so you slip one hand into your sleeve for a breath or two before returning it to the work. The skin under your nails is faintly ridged from pressing against the fish's surface. You run your thumb along the back once more, feeling those grooves, then pull away another narrow strip. The light changes slightly, a thin brightness breaking through a high seam in the clouds. It catches on the frost along the ground and on the salted ridges of the fish, making them shine for a moment before fading again. You chew slowly, eyes half-lidded against the brightness, then swallow with the ease of long practice. The bench beneath you is cold but steady, its surface holding the memory of those who sat here before. You imagine their mornings were not so different, fish in hand, salt on lips, the slow roll of the sea ahead. You shift your shoulders against the wind, lift the fish again, and let the next bite come without hurry. You let your gaze drift upward, to the slow white strokes of wings carving the sky. The gulls have been there all morning, But now they seem to gather with more purpose, riding the small winds that slide in from the sea. One passes low enough that you see the quick blink of its eye, the feathered tips adjusting by a whisper, the bird mapping air the way your hands map the fish. It tips a little, corrects, then coasts on, unhurried, as if the morning were something that belonged to it. You take a bite without looking down. The seam you opened earlier guides your fingers. The strip comes free like a thread pulled from a well-worn hem. The first push of salt is clean and bright. You hold the piece on your tongue, letting it soften against your palate before your jaw asks to work. When you chew, the resistance meets you halfway. Not soft, not hard, just the middle ground that keeps the mouth honest. You swallow and feel a small ribbon of warmth run down the center of you. The light shifts again. The cloud cover has a way of loosening and tightening, as if someone far off were cinching a gray belt around the world and then letting it out by a notch. A pale stripe falls across the racks, and the hanging fish answer by glowing at the edges and then dimming. You like the dim phase best. It feels kinder to the eyes, and the salt tastes the same no matter what the sky is doing. A single gull lands on the far end of your bench, too bold by half. It stands sideways to you, 1 foot, lifting, setting, lifting again, as if testing the wood for secrets. You do not move. The fish rests between your hands, tail laid across your right wrist, head settled in your left palm. The gull leans forward a degree and freezes, waiting for some small mercy to fall. None does. In time, it loses interest and hops to the ground, where the frost records the neat shape of its feet before the next breath of wind erases them. You work another strip loose, longer this time, and you fold it once, then again, tucking the doubled piece into your cheek to slow yourself. The slow is the point. You chew until the jaw speaks up, not loudly, just with the low, steady ache that confirms you are doing the day correctly. You stop. You let your molars rest. You count 3 breaths, each one leaving in a thin cloud and returning with the taste of brine and cold. Then you begin again. A rope taps a post behind you. Once, then again, then silence. The sound travels the length of the racks and becomes part of the larger hush. From somewhere down the line comes the soft scrape of wood on wood, someone shifting a beam by an inch, or turning a peg in its hole to quiet a complaint. You don't look. Your eyes have learned the horizon, and your hands have learned the fish. Nothing else demands much from you. Your fingers find the place where the flesh sits tight to the old spine. You press the heel of your hand and feel the minute give, the way a door yields when you lean, not with strength, but with certainty. The ridge loosens just enough to let your thumbnail walk a narrow path. A tiny crackle answers from within, dry, delicate, without aggression. You tease up a ribbon, not wide, not thin, just true, and join it to the small fan of skin curled like pale bark at the corner of the bench. You bring the next bite to your mouth and let it sit there, thinking of nothing at all. The mind empties easily in this work salt. Air, the quiet throb of the hinge where jaw meets skull, the way cloth rubs against wool when you shift on the seat. Even the sea keeps its distance, speaking in the same untranslatable tone as always. Your tongue does its part, pressing the fibers flat, measuring time in squeezes rather than seconds. When you swallow, you feel steadier than you did a breath before. Your hands cool again. You tuck both into your sleeves and cross your forearms, letting warmth collect in the hollow where wrist meets pulse. The wool gives back some of what it took, a small, trapped heat that leaks out as soon as you show it the air. You rub your thumb pads together. They are not cracked, not raw, just polished by salt and use. They belong to this morning in the way the bench belongs to it. Not claimed, just appropriate. The gull returns to the end of the bench with a friend. They hold a small council in low voices, heads jerking with comic gravity, then decide the matter without you, and step down to the frost again. One pecks once, twice at nothing, then gives up and rises on a light push of wings. The other follows, slower, as if conceding victory reluctantly. You look at what remains of the fish. It is shorter now, lighter in your palms, and it balances closer to the head than it did at dawn. The change makes your hands arrange themselves differently without being asked. You tilt the body a fraction and feel the shift weight settling, tail going from insistent to obedient. Small mechanics, obvious only to those who do them. You lean forward slightly, and set one more length of bone among its fellows beside your boot. The pile has grown into a loose scatter. Bright ends, thin lengths, a brittle arc of spine that looks like a white reed. When the wind pauses, you hear the faintest clink as a new piece finds its place. It is a domestic sort of sound, like a cup set on a table in another room, back to the seam. You open it with the patience you saved from earlier, and the seam rewards you. The strip comes off clean, lighter inside than out. Its curve, remembering the fish's life without insisting on it. You add it to the small harvest at the bench corner, and wipe your fingers along the inside of your sleeve. The wool takes the mark and makes no complaint. The sleeve already carries other mornings in a language of stains only you can read. A child's laugh slides between the racks and thins in the wind. You do not see the child, only the proof of a warm breath made visible in cold air. A little ghost that breaks and vanishes. The sound leaves a friendly emptiness behind, like a door closing gently. You take another bite, and this time close your eyes. The world stays where it is. The salt is not a flavor so much as a condition. It names the air, the bench, the skin of your hands. Your jaw keeps its rhythm slow, sure, without ambition. You swallow, open your eyes, and the horizon has moved by the smallest degree, which means the day has done its part as well. You test the tail and find it near the end of its usefulness stiffer, darker, asking for more work than you care to give it just now. You leave it be and return to the back, to the place where the flesh still gives politely when asked. The knife is there if you want it, bone warm in your grip, but you prefer fingertips for the moment, the better to feel when the fish agrees with you. A wind slides through and lifts the loose skins. They rise and settle together, like the small nod of a group that has decided on a course. You press your tongue against your teeth and taste the last of your most recent bite. Not sweetness, not bitterness, something round and entire, as if the sea had been convinced to stay in a single mouthful. Then the taste is gone, and you are ready for the next. You sit a little straighter and set the fish across your knees in the old alignment, head to the left, tail to the right, arranging the morning back into its proper order. Your breath moves in front of you in thin white strokes. The gulls write their own lines above. Between them, there is room enough for you to go on, one small bite at a time. You shift the fish in your hands, feeling its lighter weight now that so much has gone to the bone pile. The balance has changed, once tail heavy, now steady in the middle. You let it rest for a moment across your lap, the head cupped in your left palm, the tail brushing against the wool of your right sleeve. The cold seeps into your wrist through the cloth. Not unpleasant, just another reminder of the morning. Your gaze lifts from the fish to the path between the racks. Frost still holds its grip on the ground, each print and line kept sharp by the chill. A man appears at the far end, walking with the careful pace of someone used to carrying weight in the cold. In one hand, he holds a bone marker, in the other, a short stick of charcoal. He stops now and then to make a small note on the side of a post, then moves on without looking up. His work is his, yours is yours. You tear a small piece from the fish, folding it before putting it in your mouth. The salt greets you without surprise. You chew slowly, letting the fibers break down until the texture changes under your tongue. The warmth that follows is familiar now, a slow thread running from the back of your throat into your chest. The man is gone from sight by the time you look up again. In his place, a woman passes between the rows, carrying a basket bound with rope. You catch only the glimpse of its round shape before she disappears toward the longhouse. The frost crunches under her steps, a steady rhythm that fades as she goes. You reach for another strip, this one from near the spine. The flesh is denser there, so you anchor the head against your palm and work your thumb under the ridge. A small crackle answers, and the seam opens. You follow it carefully, taking the strip in one clean pull. The skin curls faintly in your fingers before you add it to the loose fan at the bench's corner. The gulls circle lower now, their shadows sliding over the frost in brief, shifting shapes. One calls sharply, the sound carrying far in the still air, then falls silent again. You glance at the bone pile beside your boot, thinner, lighter pieces than before, bright against the dark ground. You add one more, a length of spine no thicker than a reed, and listen for the small click as it lands. The light has changed again, though not by much. A softer tone in the sky, a faint deepening of the gray along the horizon. You chew another bite and find yourself counting breaths instead of moments, each one leaving a cloud that fades before the next arrives. You don't think about how much fish remains or how long it will take to finish it. The morning will shape itself without your help. Your work is simply to be here, moving jaw and hand in the same slow order until the day decides you are done. You shift your weight on the bench and reach for the small wooden cup you set near your boot at dawn. A film of frost rims the lip where your breath met the air earlier. When you lift it, the cup leaves a faint ring on the board, a dark circle that will fade once the wind decides to claim it. Inside, the water is clear and hard-looking, drawn from the stream before the skin of ice grew thick. It moves only when you move it, a flat mirror that wobbles once and settles. You tear a narrow strip from the fish, long enough to fold, thin enough to persuade, and dip the end into the cup. The water darkens at the edge where it meets salt, a small gray cloud that drifts and dissolves. You hold the strip there and feel the cold climb your fingertips, a slow tingle that urges you to finish, but you wait. The stubbornness of the flesh gives a little under the water's weight. The edge softens, the curl loosens, and a droplet forms on the strip's tip, trembles, and falls back with the smallest click. You lift the strip and bring it to your mouth. The first touch is colder than the morning air, a shock that makes your teeth cautious. Then the salt steps forward, clear and bright, unblunted by the water, only rearranged, as if the fish preferred to introduce itself in stages. You chew slowly, letting the softened fibers flatten without argument. The jaw thanks you by falling into an easier rhythm. Another piece follows. You dip it only for a count of heartbeats, just enough to persuade the outer layer to forget its stiffness. A thin line of water runs down your thumb and slips under your sleeve. It finds your wrist, delivers a quick pinch of cold, and is gone. You can feel where it went by the wake it leaves behind, a path that fades as your skin reclaims its warmth. The cup returns to the board beside you with a hollow wooden sound. You lay the strip of fish across your palm and fold it twice before you begin. The wind has turned a degree. It comes from the sea now, carrying the clean, bruised smell of kelp torn up by a far-off swell. The hanging fish answer with a dry chorus touch. Release. Touch so soft, it feels like a thought you almost had. The water in the cup shows small flecks now, salt shaken loose. Pinprick crumbs of flesh too light to sink. They catch the dim light when you tip the cup to look. Sparks that burn out as soon as you settle it again. You dip the next strip and watch the surface tension draw a brief lens around the meat. A clear collar that slips and breaks. The droplet that falls leaves a dot on your boot and shines there until the wind takes it. You pause between bites to roll your shoulders, drawing the cloak tight until the wool meets at your chest. Warmth gathers there for a moment, enough to make the next breath feel heavier in a good way. Your jaw, grateful for the water's help, eases into a slower pattern. Press, rest, press. You listen to it the way you might listen to an oar, in a calm bay, useful sound, honest sound, nothing you need to change. From the far side of the racks comes a short exchange, two voices, low and easy, the words shredded by distance until only the comfort of speech remains. A beam must be shifted, a rope must be checked. You imagine the motions without lifting your eyes. Hands on wood, weight moved by inches, a knot turned just tight enough to quiet a complaint. You tear another strip and let it hang from your fingers a moment before the cup receives it. The water takes what it wants and offers the rest back without argument. You drink a mouthful. It tastes like a story you already know. Cold, clean, with a line of brine that writes itself across your tongue and is gone. The swallow sends a chill down your throat that lives there for a heartbeat, then settles into a gentle warmth, as if the body has decided to translate cold into something it can use. You wipe your lower lip with the back of your wrist and return to the fish. The pile of loosened skin has grown a curled fan at the bench corner, each strip remembering its own curve. Beside your boot, the bone scatter has arranged itself without your help. Bright shards, thin lengths, a small arc of spine. A new piece clinks against the others when you add it, and the sound lands like a tiny bell in the morning's larger hush. You dip a wider section this time and hold it under long enough that your fingertips begin to complain. When you pull it free, the water stretches into thin strings that disagree about whether to return to the cup or come with you. Most return. A few choose your wrist again, The strip folds with a willing crease. Your teeth meet it with less resistance than before. The taste is unchanged salt, stating its case plainly, but the path to swallowing is shorter, and your jaw keeps the difference to itself. A small patch of light opens in the cloud cover and slides across the racks. The fish shine briefly at the edges, each one outlined in a faint, wet-looking glow despite being dry as old paper. The light finds the surface of your cup too, and for a second the water looks deeper than it is, as if it has forgot it is only a few swallows worth. The patch closes. The world returns to its softer gray. You prefer it that way. A child's footsteps cross 2 rows behind you, quick, careful, used to cold. The steps pause a breath's length, then move on toward some errand not worth naming. You do not turn. The morning is generous when you keep your eyes still. It keeps delivering its small proofs. The air in your nose, the wool on your wrists, the steady weight of the fish that has become lighter in the most honest ways. You slip both hands into your sleeves to warm them and cradle the cup between your forearms, letting body heat pass through wood. You count 3 breaths and feel the rim thaw under your skin by a fraction, enough to make the next dip kinder. When you bring your hands back out, they steam briefly in the cold. 2 little ghosts that vanish before you can welcome them properly. Another strip, another soak. You squeeze the end once between finger and thumb to test the give. It answers by bending where earlier it would have snapped. You bring it to your mouth and try it without haste, letting the tongue do the sensible work of pressing and folding. The swallow that follows leaves a narrow warmth trailing down into your chest, and you sit with it a while, content to have made a small trade cold for comfort, stiffness for ease. You set the cup down and listen. Wind through rope, wood remembering weight, wing over air, your own breath, even and patient. The sea speaks from beyond the rise with the same old voice, and you accept its terms. You tip the cup and see how much remains enough for a few more kindnesses to the jaw. No more than that. Enough is exactly right. You take a final dipped piece for now and lay the strip across your tongue hole. A small dare to yourself to let time do the work. The salt steps forward, then steps back. The fibers surrender without protest. When you swallow, it is like closing a well-made door. No noise, only the sense of something finished as it should be. You place the cup beside your boot again and set the fish across your knees. Head to the left, tail to the right, the old arrangement that makes the hands sure. The water in the cup goes still. The wind considers the corner of your cloak and lets it be. You look once at the horizon, a thin, quiet line, and then at the fish, which asks only for the next small attention. You give it, and the morning gives itself back in kind. You notice the small pile at your feet, now thin, pale bones resting loosely together, each one shaped by the fish's old frame. Some are straight as twigs, others carry a slight curve, the memory of how they once held muscle in place. The frost around them has begun to soften, where your boots and breath have leaned too close, leaving darker patches in the pale ground. When you set another piece down, it lands with a faint, dry click against the others. The sound is so slight that it disappears into the morning almost immediately, yet you know it happened. You watch the new piece settle in, its bright edge catching what little light the day offers before the wind shadows it. A gull drifts overhead, its wing beats slow and deliberate. It tilts its head in your direction for the length of a breath, then glides away toward the shore. You know it will circle back once you've left. They always do. For now, the pile remains untouched, a small archive of the meal so far. You tear a strip from nearer the spine, where the flesh is firmer. It resists, the fibers drawing tight before giving way in one clean pull. You chew with the steady patience the morning has taught you, letting the salt sit on your tongue until the warmth in your chest matches the cold at your back. The wind shifts slightly, running parallel to the racks now. It moves the fish in gentle synchrony, rows of pale bodies swaying together, tails knocking lightly against the wooden beams. The sound is dry and hollow, like a page turned too slowly to tear. You glance up only briefly. The sight is the same as every other day, which is its own comfort. You set another bone down. This one is thin and forked at one end, the join so delicate it looks ready to snap under its own lightness. It joins the others without a sound you can hear, but you feel the placement in your fingertips. The pile grows by degrees. each piece a quiet record of work done without hurry. You try a bite from closer to the tail. The flavor is the same, but the texture changes, the outer edge tougher, the center breaking more easily. Once your teeth find the right path, you swallow slowly and breathe out through your nose, tasting salt in the air as well as on your tongue. The pile waits at your feet. The gulls wait at the shore. The sea waits behind the rise, moving in its own old pattern. You keep your place on the bench, hands sure, pace steady, the next strip already between your fingers before you think to reach for it. They arrive in small steps, the children, as if the air itself were nudging them forward. 4 of them stand a little distance away, close enough that you can see the pink on their cheeks, far enough that they think they are being polite. They say nothing, but their eyes are fixed on your hands on the fish, the slow tearing, the chewing that follows without ceremony. The youngest shifts from foot to foot, wool cap pulled low over ears, breath puffing in quick bursts. An older boy rests a hand on her shoulder, a quiet anchor to keep her still. Another child tilts his head slightly, watching the way your fingers pinch a seam in the flesh and pull without tearing it ragged. You remember being their size, watching mornings unfold like this before you understood the patience in them. Back then, the work seemed endless, the chewing a chore, the taste too sharp to call welcome. But time changes the mouth and the mind, until salt becomes the measure of the day, and the slow work feels like its own kind of rest. You tear a narrow strip and hold it out toward the group without a word. The boy with his hand on the little one's shoulder steps forward, takes it between thumb and forefinger, and nods once before retreating. He passes the strip to the youngest, who turns it over twice before bringing it to her mouth. She bites carefully, jaw working in small, deliberate motions. They stay for a while, shifting only when the wind grows bolder. You keep eating as you were, the fish balanced in your lap, the pace unchanged. Now and then their eyes meet yours for a breath, as if checking that they are watching correctly, that this is still the right way to do it. A gust carries the smell of the racks over all of you, brine, wood, and the faint musk of fish oil. The youngest wrinkles her nose for a heartbeat, then chews again, deciding the smell and the taste belong together. You set another strip in your mouth, fold it with your tongue, and feel the warmth of the swallow settle low. The children say nothing when they leave, only shifting as a group until the frost crunch of their boots fades between the rows. The space they occupied folds back into the morning without a seam, leaving you with the same bench, the same fish, and the same quiet work. You rise from the bench, the weight of the fish light in your hand now, and step toward the deeper shadow beneath the racks. The wind has picked up, brushing sharper against your cheek, and the shelter here feels immediate. The posts and beams form a narrow roof overhead, their surfaces rough with age, darkened by years of salt and sun. Inside the shadow, the light is filtered, dimming the pale sheen of the fish in your palm. The air smells different here, less of the open sea, more of wood that has absorbed decades of brine and smoke. A rope creaks softly where it loops over a beam, its fibers stiff from frost. You lean against a post and glance upward. The hanging fish sway only slightly in the wind's softened reach, each one suspended on a loop of twine, tails pointing toward the packed ground. The wood above you has a grain like waves caught mid-motion, worn smooth by hands checking knots, lifting loads, or steadying themselves against the beam's height. You shift the fish in your hand and work your thumb along the back. The seam near the ridge still holds a little. You pinch and lift, feeling the faint give as the skin agrees to part. It peels away with a quiet sigh, curling in your fingers before you add it to the pile of loose strips tucked into the corner of your cloak. The wind hums faintly through a narrow gap in the boards, a sound different from the open-air whisper between the racks. It is lower here, more contained, like a voice speaking in another room. You chew a bite slowly, the salt sharper in this cooler, shaded air, the texture a little firmer without the touch of sun. Your boots leave shallow prints in the thin frost on the packed earth as you shift your stance. The marks overlap older ones, a pattern so layered that it's hard to tell which are yours from this morning and which belong to others from days past. The ground here always looks the same, worked and reworked, pressed into memory by many souls. From somewhere beyond the shelter, a faint knock of wood on wood reaches you, then stops. You take another bite, letting your teeth work without hurry, your other hand resting on the post's worn edge. The surface is cool, the grain catching at your skin like an old habit. In this dimmer place, the fish feels heavier, as if its weight has shifted with the light. You turn it once in your hand, aligning it head to left, tail to right, the arrangement that feels correct. The seam waits where you left it, ready for the next patient pull. You keep the fish angled, so the spine faces you, the ridge visible beneath the pale flesh. With a slow, steady motion, you set your thumb just beside it and press. The brittle line gives slightly, and you work your fingers along it, coaxing the spine away from the meat. Each small shift is accompanied by the faintest crackle, dry, delicate, the sound of something that no longer remembers the sea. Piece by piece, the backbone loosens. You pinch near the head, lift carefully, and feel the weight change in your hand as the long, narrow frame begins to free itself. It bends a little, brittle but not yet breaking, until you ease it out entirely and lay it across your knee. The spine is lighter than it looks, a pale arc with darker joints where it once met the ribs. You set it gently in the bone pile at your feet. The clink as it lands is soft, more felt than heard. The pile itself has grown into a loose scatter ends, slivers, a curve of jawbone with its sockets empty, waiting for the wind to hide them in frost. With the spine gone, the meat gives more easily under your hands. You tear a strip from the open side, the texture looser now, less resistant. It folds against your fingers in a way the earlier pieces did not, and the first bite comes without the firm push your jaw has been used to. The salt is no less present, but it spreads faster across your tongue. You chew slowly, feeling the meat's softness compared to the earlier work. It doesn't ask for as much effort, but you keep the same pace, letting the morning decide the rhythm. Outside the shelter, the wind brushes through the racks, a muted whisper finding its way between the posts. The sound makes the hanging fish sway gently, tails tapping against wood like a patient, unhurried knock. Another strip follows, torn from near the center where the flesh has dried thickest. Even here, the absence of the spine makes the pull easier. You fold it once before placing it in your mouth, pressing it flat with your tongue until it gives. Each swallow leaves behind a thread of warmth that coils low in your chest. You look down at what remains. Without its spine, the fish sits differently in your hand, lighter at the center, more pliant. The head still holds its shape, eyes dulled to a cloudy gray, the mouth open as if still tasting the air. You shift it so the head rests against your palm, and the tail angles outward, ready for the next patient tear. You set the fish across your knees and reach for the small horn cup you tucked beside the post. The cup's surface is smooth, where hands have polished it, and slightly rough, where time insisted on being remembered. You tilt it and watch the liquid inside lift just enough to show a thin line above its own level, then fall back into stillness. Whatever warmth it had at dawn has gone the way of all warmth outdoors spent, but not wasted. You raise the cup and take a careful sip. It is not heat you taste now, but the ghost of it, something faint and honey bitter, that lingers at the top of the throat before it loosens and slides down. It clears the salt from your tongue for the space of a breath and leaves the mouth ready for the work again. You set the cup on the bench so gently that wood and horn speak only in a low, hollow note that fades before the next breath forms. Your neighbor had pressed it into your palm earlier with a nod that counted as everything needed. You turn the cup once in your fingers, as if to mark the gesture, then bring your attention back to the fish. Without the spine, the body bends sweetly when asked. You slip your thumb under a loosened edge and lift. The strip rises in a slow arc, pale inside, darker where the outer skin held it firm all those weeks in the wind. You fold the strip once to slow yourself, then bring it to your mouth. The first push of teeth meets something more willing than before. The fibers part without drama, and your jaw thanks you by falling into an easier rhythm. You take the measure of the piece with your tongue, press, rest, press, the way you would test a board for flex before trusting it with weight. When you swallow, warmth unknots quietly in your chest and holds there, as if it has been waiting for permission. Outside the shelter, the wind draws its finger along the racks, and the racks answer with a low murmur. Ropes shiver. Twine thinks about complaining, then decides against it. A gull cuts a white line through the gray light, and is gone before you can decide whether you saw it or only sensed its passing. You lift the cup again, not to drink this time, but to feel the curve in your palm. A small reminder that hands exist for holding as much as for tearing and chewing. You set the cup near your boot and test another seam. Your thumbnail walks a narrow path along the back, feeling for the place where flesh offers a little give. When you find it, you do not pull hard. You invite. The meat agrees to leave itself in your fingers. The strip curls once against your knuckle, and you lay it over your tongue whole, a small dare to your patience. The salt steps forward, clear and declarative. The fibers ask for time. You give it. The piece becomes something you can fold with your tongue, and then it is gone, leaving a line of warmth that feels like the inside of a word you don't need to say. You rest your jaw and rub the hinge with two knuckles, the way you've always done when the morning has gotten this far. The ache is honest, a ledger kept in the body. You let it be. The bench takes your weight as if it had planned on you, and the post at your shoulder gives the kind of company that requires nothing. You pick up the fish and look at what remains. The head, a length of flank, a tail that has gone from stubborn to resigned. You turn the body so the head settles into your left palm, as it always does when your hands want to be sure. The tail points toward the path between racks, where footprints layer over footprints until they make a kind of map that means nothing to anyone who didn't walk it. A thread of light slides under the sheltering beam and paints a thin gold along the exposed flesh. It is gone almost at once, but you have it now, filed with the other small proofs this morning has offered. The click of bone on bone at your boot, the hush of rope on wood, the way horn and bench sound together when the cup returns to its place. You prize up another edge. The strip you free is thicker than the last, and you divide it with your thumb before taking half to the mouth. You chew until the piece lies flat as a tide-wet pebble, and then you let it go. The cup draws your hand again. You drink a mouthful and feel the liquid move cool and neat down your throat, rinsing the salt but not erasing it. You set the cup down and wipe your thumb along the inside of your sleeve. The wool darkens a shade, carrying a story that won't interest anyone but you, and that is enough. Somewhere to your right, wood knocks wood twice measured, polite. You glance out past the posts and see only the suggestion of movement, the kind that says a task is being done as it always is. The morning likes things that happen in the old order. So do you. You fold your cloak closer at the chest and feel warmth pool briefly in the hollow there. It is not much, and it is perfect. You peel another strip and take it in 3 small bites instead of 1. You pause between each, allowing jaw and tongue to share the load, counting breaths without numbers, just the length of in, the longer length of out. The world complies by not rushing. A loose skin curl near your knee lifts and settles in time with the wind's turn. A thin flake of salt catches your lower lip and dissolves, as if it had always intended to be there and nowhere else. The fish in your hands is lighter now. When you shift it, the balance changes under the skin of your palms in a way your eyes don't need to confirm. You add 2 narrow bones to the scatter at your boot and listen for the tiny sound they make when they choose their places. It is there. It is enough. You take a final sip from the horn and find the bottom. You tip it a fraction more than necessary to catch the last cold sweetness, then return it to the bench. The empty tells you nothing you didn't already know. Mornings end by degrees. You smile with the inside of your mouth, an old habit no one can see, and return to the fish without trying to measure what remains. Another strip, another chew. The line of warmth returns to your chest and stays a little longer this time, as if it has learned your pace. You set the head against your palm and smooth the back with your thumb, a gesture without purpose, except that it feels like respect. The wind turns the racks into a low choir, and the posts around you stand like old friends. You breathe, you bite, you swallow. The day moves a finger's width, and you move with it. You tilt your head without really searching for the sun. The sky answers in degrees of gray, rather than with a circle you can point to. Still, you know where it must be above the paler seam of cloud, to the right of the notch between 2 low hills. You measure the morning by habit, the angle of shadows under the racks, the length of your breath when it breaks in front of you, the way the wind slips around the posts instead of through them. You set the fish across your laphead in your left palm, tail over your right wrist, the old arrangement that lets your hands think for you. With the spine gone and the flesh yielding more easily, you choose a long seam along the back rather than small bites. Your thumb finds the path where you left it and confirms the give with a slow press. The strip rises, patient and clean, like a ribbon from a bundle that would prefer to stay tied but knows it cannot. You lay that ribbon on your tongue and hold it. Salt sets its terms, firm and familiar. The fibers ask for attention and time. You answer in the slow language you have spoken all morning. Press, rest, press. Your jaw carries the rhythm without complaint. The swallow is quiet, a door closing softly in a house that knows all its hinges. The shelter hums when the wind moves. Rope whispers against wood. A loose peg taps once and is still. Beyond the posts, the world continues in its old order waves shouldering the shore. Gulls drawing pale figures in the air. Someone testing a knot to see if it remembers its purpose. You do not stand to look. The world reports to you anyway, in sounds and temperature, and the way light takes interest in the edges of things. You work another length free. The flesh parts cleanly now, obedient as cloth. You fold the strip once before bringing it to your mouth, not to be precious with it, but to ask your jaw for the easier job. A little warmth finds your chest and lingers there. Your shoulders fall. The cloak settles, wool on wool, trapping a small pocket of heat where your hands can steal from it later. The bone pile by your boot has become a careful scatter. You add a bright piece and listen for the tiny note it makes when it meets the others. The sound finds you delicate and sure. You lift the fish and consider the tail. Much of its stubbornness has gone now that the center yields. You pinch a thin beginning and draw it toward you, feeling the outer layer resist for a breath before it agrees to be changed. The strip that comes away is darker at one edge, paler at the other. You add it to the fan of skins at the bench corner, which lifts and settles as the wind chooses. Your jaw speaks up a mild, even ache that is testimony rather than complaint. You rub the hinge with 2 knuckles, then hide both hands inside your sleeves. Heat collects quickly when skin meets skin. You count a few breaths, not with numbers, but with lengths. Long in, longer out, then bring your hands back to the work while the warmth is still yours. You glance along the path between the racks. Footprints overlay footprints, until the ground carries a script only the morning can read. The newest marks are crisp. Older ones soften where the frost has begun to forget them. You open a longer seam along the back. The knife's bone handle is warm enough to sit easily against your palm, but you do not ask for the blade yet. Fingertips tell you more than steel does. You coax the seam with pressure instead of edge, and the fish answers with a subtle, papery sound that keeps to itself. When your jaw asks for delay, you honor it by setting the next piece on your tongue whole and letting time perform the first half of the work. Light shifts by a fraction. For a heartbeat, the racks shine at their rims, and your cup's lip holds a dull star. Then the day resumes its soft gray. You smooth the flesh with your thumb in a gesture that settles you more than it serves the fish. Texture answers texture, ridged grain of meat to ridged skin of hand, until the two agree about being here together. You take another bite. The taste does not change and should not. You came for steadiness, not surprise. Steps cross and fade behind you. A single gull sketches a call and narrows it to silence at once, as if it remembered mid-sound that there was no urgent news to bring. You set 2 narrow bones in the pile and watch your breath thread the air in front of them. The threads break like fine glass and are gone. You flex your fingers. The invisible film that work leaves on the skin neither oil nor dryness. Only proof makes the bench grain read like a familiar text under your nails. You wipe your fingers along your sleeve where older mornings have already signed their names. You consider how far the day has gone. Not far, not near only itself. The line where sea meets sky has not moved enough to matter, yet the shadows between racks lie longer than when you first sat. You will not hurry to meet dusk. Dusk will meet you. There will be a hearth later, and a place near it where what remains can soften without losing its plainness. Knowing this is enough. You free one more long piece and take it in 3 bites, pausing between each to let the ache ebb and the warmth collect. When you swallow the last, you do nothing for a while but breathe and listen. The racks murmur. The post behind your shoulder keeps its counsel. The wind makes a decision about direction and then behaves as if it had always meant to blow that way. You weigh the fish. Lighter. Honest about it. You set it head left, tail right again, not because the fish cares, but because your hands do. The old arrangement keeps your body inside the morning's grammar. You press your thumb at the seam once more and feel the agreeable rise. There is more work to do, but none of it is hard. Your jaw settles back into its tide. The day slides forward by a finger's width. You go with it. You shift slightly on the bench, just enough to ease the weight from one hip to the other. The movement draws a faint groan from the wood, though it settles again quickly, as if embarrassed to have spoken. The fish lies quiet across your lap, its head turned outward, the tail brushing the wool of your cloak. You rest your left palm over the head. Not to hold it still there is no need, but to remind yourself it is still yours to finish. The air inside the shelter has grown cooler. The shadow has thickened as the racks above have leaned a little further into the day. The light that enters now does so at a shallow angle, slanting between the fish in faint ribbons that move when the wind touches them. You follow one ribbon across the post beside you, over the curve of a hanging cod, and down into the scatter of bones at your boot. The line fades before it reaches the far edge of the pile. You take a strip from near the belly. This meat is thinner, its fibers finer. It comes away almost without resistance, like thread pulled from an old seam. The first bite confirms the difference. The salt feels sharper here, the chew shorter. You let it linger anyway, holding it between tongue and teeth until it surrenders in its own time. A gust presses against the racks, making the hanging fish tap each other in low wooden notes. It's the sound of something counting, though the numbers are not meant for you. You pause with the next strip in your fingers, listening until the gust passes and the taps fall back into the day's wider quiet. You tear another piece, this time from the thicker flank, where the fibers run more stubbornly. Your jaw works with the kind of patience that does not need to be renewed. It was set at the start of the morning and will hold until the last bite. Each chew works a little warmth into your chest, the kind that does not chase away the cold but lives alongside it, sharing the space without conflict. A shadow moves at the far end of the racks, tall, slow, and without urgency. Whoever it is passes between posts without a glance in your direction, the outline softening into the gray beyond. You set the remaining fish on the bench beside you for a moment, stretching your hands inside your sleeves to find the heat stored there. The skin of your fingers feels rougher now, though the work has been steady and unforced. You rub thumb against forefinger, feeling the faint ridges where salt has worked its way into the skin. You return your hands to the fish. The head tilts slightly when you lift it, the dull eyes fixed in a direction you cannot see. You run your thumb along the back until you find a seam worth following. The strip comes away uneven at first, but straightens as you guide it toward the tail. The outer skin is dark, almost leathery, while the inside still holds a pale memory of the day it left the sea. You fold the strip twice before placing it in your mouth. The salt floods quickly, but you take small bites, letting each one rest before you swallow. The pile at your boot gains another thin bone, which settles against the others without shifting them. The sight of it there, a new piece among the old, feels like progress, though the work has no finish line. Outside the shelter, the wind shifts again. This time it carries the sound of distant water, a muted shushing as waves collapse and slide back into themselves. You close your eyes for a moment, not to dream, but to let that sound meet the taste still on your tongue. When you open them, the light has tilted another fraction, and the fish waits in your lap exactly as you left it. You balance the fish in both hands for a moment, letting your fingers find the familiar points along its body, the ridge where the spine once sat, the hollow curve of the belly, the thin taper near the tail. Each place tells you something about how the sea once shaped it, and how the wind has finished the job. The skin at the tail is firm, almost glossy, catching what little light filters into the shelter. You pull a narrow strip from that tail edge. It resists for a breath, then gives with a sound like a thin cloth tearing. The strip curls in your fingers as if trying to fold itself away from you, but you straighten it gently before bringing it to your mouth. The first bite is small, enough to taste without rushing. The salt is deep here, layered into the meat by weeks of wind and air so cold, it works like a second brine. A rope overhead shifts, the sound low and fibrous. Somewhere beyond the racks, a gull sends out a single call and waits for no answer. You set the fish across your knees again, freeing your hands to stretch once more inside your sleeves. Heat collects in the bend of each finger, in the cup of your palms, staying just long enough for you to claim it before it escapes into the air. You work another piece free, this time from nearer the head. The meat there is denser, less inclined to separate. Your thumb and forefinger pinch and pull with care, easing the strip away in short, deliberate motions. When it comes loose, you lay it over your tongue in one length, letting the salt claim the first moment, the chew the second. You take your time with each fiber until it falls apart without argument. The bone pile at your boot has shifted in the wind, one narrow piece rolling to rest against another. You watch it settle before dropping in a fresh addition, a flat shard from near the belly. It lands with a soft, certain clink, the sound joining all the others you've made since morning began. Beyond the shelter, the light has grown cooler. The gray of the sky leans toward blue now, though the sun itself still hides. The shadows of the racks stretch a little farther across the ground, edging toward the place where frost still holds. You glance along the path between the rows of posts. Footprints are fewer now, though the older ones remain like pressed script in the packed earth. You take another piece from the tail end, folding it once before biting. The salt feels sharper against the softer flesh, as though the wind and cold work differently there. You chew until the edges round away, until the taste feels less like an arrival and more like a place you've been sitting in for hours. You pause with the next strip in hand, listening. The wind has slowed to something quieter, and with it comes the faint, even sound of water lapping at the shore. The racks sway just enough to make the ropes breathe against the posts. You let those sounds fill the gap between bites, holding the fish lightly in your hands until the moment feels ready again. When you do eat, it's without ceremony, a small, plain motion that returns salt and warmth to the body. You swallow, set the fish back in your lap, and rest both hands on its cool skin. The day is neither rushing nor standing still. It moves at the same slow pace as your jaw, and you move with it. You keep the fish steady across your knees and lean your shoulder more fully into the post. The wood receives you with a faint shiver that travels upward and disappears into the rack's crossbeam. Above, a length of twine turns a fraction, then rests, then turns back as if the wind were practicing a lesson in patience. Each turn makes a small, fibrous murmur, a sound so modest it would vanish if you tried too hard to hear it. You don't. You let it arrive and go, as if it were a thought you had once and decided not to keep. The air is cooler here inside the shelter, the light pared down to a simple gray that flatters nothing and forgives everything. You press your thumb along the open seam and discover a neat beginning. The strip lifts without sulking, pale within, darker along the edge where the outer skin took most of the wind's attention. You fold it once so your jaw can be lazy, and the first press of teeth meets not struggle but cooperation. The fibers separate politely. Salt states its case and then stands back to let you carry on. A rope above you changes its mind and lets out a single low creak. It sounds like old leather speaking in another room. The posts answer by doing nothing at all, just being posts, holding, as if that were a kind of music in itself. You take another slow bite and let your tongue do the patient work, flattening what the jaw would rather rush. The swallow leaves the usual warm thread down the middle of you, not hot, not bright, only certain. You slide the fish a handspan to the left and check the belly side. The flesh there runs in cleaner lines, fine, almost silken threads that promise an easier piece if you treat them gently. Your thumbnail walks a short path, finds a weakness, and persuades. The strip follows your hand like a ribbon pulled from a bundle, quick to curl and just as quick to be convinced to lie flat across your palm. You place it on your tongue hole to make time earn its keep. Salt blooms. Fibers begin to remember how to part. You wait and then help, not a leader so much as a companion to the process. Outside the posts, the wind tries a different angle. The racks give back a soft chorus, faint taps of tail against wood, rope sliding in its notch. The shy complaint of a peg with ambitions to be noticed. You stare at none of it and see all of it. The world will announce itself whether you look or not. Your work is here in your lap, a slow calculus of pressure and pause. Your fingers have taken on that winter polish, the invisible film that is not oil, not water, just the sum of salt and handling. You rub thumb against forefinger and feel the fine squeaking drag of skin on skin. The bench's grain answers your nails with a familiar script. When you scrape lightly along it, an alphabet of ridges your hands could read blind. You wipe your fingertips on the inside of your sleeve. The wool records the moment in a shade darker than its neighbors. A story nobody else will ever ask to hear. You lift the fish and feel how much lighter it is. A truth your palms accept before your eyes tally it. The head still holds. The tail has learned humility. The middle cooperates. You pluck a small bone from the edge and drop it by your boot. The sound it makes is hardly sound at all, more a delicate agreement with the pieces already there. The pile has become its own small shore. Bright slivers, a pale arc, lengths thin as reeds, each one a little wave frozen in place. Another strip, this one from higher on the back. It resists for a breath and then behaves. You fold it twice. Your jaw, grateful for negotiations that end early, chooses the old rhythm. Press, rest, press. The ache at the hinge is no longer a stranger. It is a record of what has gone right today. You rub the spot with two knuckles, and the ache recedes a step. Not out of pity, but out of respect. The wind pauses, and in the pause you hear a smaller world. The soft strike of your tongue against your palate. The quiet click when a salt crystal gives up and becomes part of the morning. The linen hush of your cloak when you shift your shoulder. Even your breath sounds like a measured tool drawn, used, set down carefully. You set the fish crosswise and smooth the exposed flesh with your thumb. The texture is honest ridges where muscle learned its trade, shallows where the drying took more than it gave, a sugared roughness of salt where the light, if it cared to visit, would find a field of dull stars. You lift a narrow length and make a neat tier that stops just before you ask it to. Control is less important than courtesy. The strip thanks you by surrendering in one clean piece. From beyond the shelter, a distant, even breath of water reaches you, the sea speaking in its oldest voice. A long exhale on stone and a patient draw back over pebbles. The sound folds into the rack's minor creaks until both belong to each other. You let the noises decide which comes first. They refuse, which is perfect. You chew, swallow, rest. You dip the tip of your sleeve over your lower lip to collect a line of salt that had staged a small escape. Your sleeve keeps it. Your mouth doesn't argue. You turn the fish so the head settles into your left palm, the old arrangement. The grammar your hands trust, and begin a longer seam beside the place where the spine used to keep its counsel. Fingertips no more than blade this far into the work. You let them. Light shifts just a hair. A milky gleam runs along the edges of the fish hanging nearest the shelter's mouth, then nods and moves on. You note it without inventory. Your morning has always been a ledger that counts in textures and breaths, not numbers. A length of twine above you decides to tighten, then thinks better of it. The not quite creak that follows is the sound of restraint. You take its example and set the next piece on your tongue without chewing it first. Time works its quiet lever. You assist when asked. The piece obeys, and the swallow closes like a well-made door, fitted, unremarkable, satisfying for being exactly itself. The bone pile gets another patient addition. The fan of skins at the bench corner lifts and settles with a small, polite applause no one else can hear. You tuck both hands into your sleeves and trap heat where wrist meets palm. Breath in, longer breath out. When you return your hands to the air, steam ghosts from your knuckles and vanishes. The cold reclaims what it understands as its own. You check what remains. A generous flank, a compliant tail, the blunt architecture of the head, enough to stay here a while. Not so much that the day will forget to move. You press your thumb along the back and feel the seam greet you like a friend who never needs your name. You answer with the same small pressure as before, and the fish answers back by letting go where you ask. The racks murmur, ropes breathe, posts keep still. You lift a strip to your mouth and let the morning proceed at its chosen pace, as if the creak of twine and the hush of your jaw were two hands turning the same slow wheel. You lean your shoulder more firmly into the post and let your ears do the work your eyes have done all morning. The shelter has its own language. Ropes keep sentences short. Knots speak only when pressed. The beams prefer to remember rather than report. When the wind changes by a finger's width, everything answers in tones you know without thinking. A length of twine above you utters a dry syllable and then holds its breath. Another, somewhere to your left, replies with a softer note, the sound of fiber realigning itself to a new pull. You set the fish across your knees, head in your left palm, tail curled over your right wrist, the grammar that keeps the hands honest. Your thumb finds the next seam by feel alone. The flesh answers with a papery consent. A strip lifts, pale within, dusk colored along the edge where weather lived longest. You fold the strip once to persuade your jaw to be patient, and let salt present its familiar case. The fibers do not argue. They separate like threads coaxed from old cloth. The rope sounds gather into a quiet pattern tap, hush, creak held back, silence, another small tap. Each noise wears its own distance. Some arrive from high in the rack, thin and bright as frost cracking under a first footstep. Others come from close by, round and low, like the throat of a wooden instrument warming to itself. You do not sort them. You let them braid together in the space around your head. Wind comes in a modest gust, shivering the shelter so gently that the post at your shoulder seems to sigh. The hanging fish tilt and return, tails brushing wood with the smallest approval. Farther out, beyond the posts, the open racks answer with a softer chorus, looser knots, longer swings, a clatter so faint you would miss it if the morning hadn't quieted you down to hear it. You ease another length from the back of the fish, a clean ribbon that chooses to curl when it reaches your palm. You straighten it with 2 fingers and lay it on your tongue hole. The jaw waits. The tongue does the early work, pressing, folding, waiting again. When you chew, the sound is internal, a private rhythm that matches the distant rope talk without meaning to. You swallow and feel the familiar line of warmth run down your middle and settle where it always does, not as heat, exactly, but as agreement. A peg somewhere behind you clicks twice, reconsidering its seat. You picture it without looking, a wooden tongue in a wooden mouth, remembering where to rest. The image is pleasant and passes without leaving anything to fix. Your fingers, polished by work in winter, carry that faint drag of skin on skin when you rub thumb to forefinger. You scrape your nails once along the bench grain to bring back a little grip and wipe your fingertips on the inside of your sleeve. The wool records the moment in a darker stroke among older, similar strokes. You lift the fish and check the belly side. The light has thinned enough that edges become more interesting than surfaces. The ridge where the spine once lived is a pale path under your thumb. You press beside it and find the place the wind forgot, the place that gives up a strip with almost embarrassing ease. You add the curl of loosened skin to the small fan at the bench's corner. The fan lifts and settles, as if applauding politely for the rope that has just learned a new note above you. You set a bright shard of bone by your boot. It lands among its fellows with a barely audible tick, a sound you feel in the fingertips more than you hear at the ear. The pile has become a humble map of the morning. Slivers like white reeds, a thin arc, blunt ends that keep their shape no matter how long the wind negotiates with them. The rope pattern changes. A longer creak glides across the rafters, drawing a line that stretches from high above your left shoulder to somewhere you decide not to locate. It fades into a hush that leaves your own breath briefly, the loudest thing in the shelter. You slow that too, just to listen better. Draw in, let out longer, watch the cloud form and shred in front of your mouth. The racks take the hint and return to their smaller vocabulary. You sip from the horn cup because the gesture pleases the moment more than your thirst does. The liquid has lost any ambition to be warm, but it keeps the kindness of clearing the tongue. You set the cup back with care. Horn and bench agree on a single hollow syllable, and then keep quiet about it. A distant footstep tests a board. The board replies with a low, dutiful thump. Even that joins the rope talk, becomes part of the day's unhurried recitation. You work a thicker piece free from the flank, fold it twice, and let the jaw discover that it is easier now than an hour ago. The ache at the hinge confirms the math of the morning, what you've asked of it, what it has given back, what remains between you. You rub the spot gently with 2 knuckles, and the ache stands a pace farther off, attentive, but not insistent. You press your thumb along the back again, and feel the seam offer itself. The knife stays where it is, bone warm against your palm when you test it, but unnecessary. Fingertips learn more from cooperation than blades do from force. The strip that rises is longer than the last. You divide it with your thumb and take half, promising the remainder a turn it will get soon enough. Salt arrives. texture answers. Swallow. Quiet returns to where it was, which is almost everywhere. The wind turns a degree. The shelter answers with a collective breath, posts not moving. Ropes redistributing attention. Twine resettling in its grooves. A single gull writes a brief line across the mouth of the racks and ends the sentence without punctuation. You accept the edit. You look once at what remains of the fish. The head is architecture now, the tail cooperative, the center generous. You set two thin bones down by your boot and hear the smallest clink when they choose their places. Your sleeve carries the smell that will follow you home without asking permission. The bench remembers your shape better than when you first sat. A new sound enters very small, very near a thread-like complaint where a rope has found a burr and is telling it gently to smooth itself. You reach up without standing, find the line by feel, and pinch the strand beside the rough place. A brief rub, a turn, another rub. The complaint quiets. The shelter's language returns to vowels and rests. You take your hand down and bring your attention back to the fish, as if you'd never moved it. Another bite, slower than you think you need, and the morning agrees with your caution by stretching itself just enough to hold the pace. You count breaths without numbers. Your jaw keeps time with the ropes. The wind revises nothing important. You smooth the flesh once with your thumb, a gesture that means nothing to the fish and everything to your hands, and settle it head left, tail right again. The old alignment that keeps the body faithful to its own routine. Above you, a knot murmurs a final, satisfied sound, and the racks fall into a silence that is not the absence of noise, but the presence of everything arranged. You take the next strip, you chew, you swallow. The shelter holds its breath with you, and then lets it go in the same soft measure. Nothing demands, nothing refuses. The morning turns another invisible notch, and you stay exactly where you should be. Listening to rope and wood confirm that you are doing the day correctly. You shift the weight of the fish so the head rests deeper into your palm, the tail lightening across your wrist. This old position feels like a handshake repeated enough times to need no thought. Your other hand hovers for a moment, letting fingertips read the grain of the dried skin, a map of wind patterns preserved in a thin, salted landscape. The ridges speak of days hung on the racks, of frost laid over them at night, of mornings when light came slow. Your thumb presses into a narrow seam running alongside the spine's memory. The strip gives without hesitation, as if it has been waiting for you. Pale inside, a shade darker at the edges, it peels away with a soft, fibrous sigh. You bring it to your mouth unbroken, letting it lie heavy on the tongue. The salt greets you before the chew begins, and then the work is steady press, rest, press, until the fibers agree to go their separate ways. The swallow carries the same calm warmth as every other before it, a quiet reward that asks for nothing more. Above, a rope turns half a circle and stops, like a thought that found no conclusion. The wood of the rack stays still, but you hear it remember the movement, a faint groan that settles into the air and becomes part of the shelter's low hum. Somewhere outside, a gull gives a brief, flat cry. It doesn't circle back for another. You set the fish briefly on the bench to stretch your fingers inside your sleeves. Heat pools in the small space between palm and fabric, enough to remind you of how the cold has been slowly claiming the rest of the day. When you bring your hands out again, a faint mist curls from your knuckles, disappearing before it can rise. Your fingertips seek out another length of flesh, this time nearer the belly. The texture here is smoother, finer, the fibers running in close, polite lines. The strip lifts in a single curve, almost curling itself toward you as if to avoid the cold air. You straighten it between thumb and forefinger and fold it twice before the first bite. The chew is brief, the salt sharper, the swallow quicker. A small fragment of bone clicks lightly against your teeth before being set aside for the pile at your boot. The pile has grown into a small fan of pale slivers, each one angled differently, none disturbing the others. They rest as if a single breath could scatter them, though none has tried. You add the latest piece with the same quiet care as all the rest, hearing the tiny, deliberate sound as it finds its place. A shadow moves across the mouth of the shelter, long and slow, too quiet for boots, too high for dogs, perhaps another person at the racks, though they pass without turning toward you. The movement leaves the light momentarily thinned, then returns it to its usual colorless self. You look down at the fish again. The tail end is still generous. You work a strip from its edge, feeling the toughness give way to a softer, fibrous middle. This piece takes longer to chew, the salt layered deep, the texture changing as each bite works it looser. You pause once, swallow, then finish the rest in 2 slow presses. Wind leans into the racks with a mild insistence, and the fish above you sway, their tails tapping the posts like someone counting without speaking. The pattern is irregular, as if the numbers don't matter, only the act of touching wood and returning to stillness. You close your eyes for a breath to hear it more clearly, then open them to see nothing changed. Your thumb finds another seam, and the cycle repeats: lift, fold, chew, swallow. The salt sits on your lips now, a faint crust you smooth away with the edge of your sleeve. That motion leaves a darker patch on the wool, one more mark among many from mornings like this. A knot above shifts against its post, the sound dry and unhurried. You look up long enough to see the rope pull once, then relax, satisfied with its place. You return your gaze to the fish and to the work in your hands. Another strip waits to be found, and you oblige without speaking, without thinking much past the next bite. The sea beyond the racks keeps its voice low, but you can hear it if you lean just slightly forward. It's the sound of water remembering the shore coming to it, leaving it, repeating without impatience. You let that sound live beside the one in your mouth, the quiet rhythm of teeth and tongue that has filled so much of the day. You glance at the remaining fish. There is still enough to keep you here, still enough for the work to feel like something worth not rushing. You take the next piece and begin again, the morning unchanged except for the bones gathering at your feet and the soft weariness settling in your jaw. The fish sits crosswise in your lap now, head angled toward your left knee, tail resting just off your right thigh. It feels lighter than when you began. The weight shifted inward toward the thick center, the spine's curve more obvious in your palm. Your thumb traces that curve as though it were a well-used path on a map you've carried for years. The ridges are cool, the skin tight but not brittle, and each touch leaves a faint impression that vanishes almost as soon as it's made. You press gently into the side, finding the next seam by instinct. The strip lifts with quiet reluctance, as though testing your resolve. You coax it up a little at a time, the fibers separating with the muted pull of old thread from heavy cloth. You don't rush. The first bite waits in your palm until you are ready, the salt scent rising faintly, sharper where the strip has broken clean from the flesh. You bring it to your mouth in one slow motion, lay it across your tongue, and let the salt make its small, unhurried introduction. Outside the shelter, a gull drags a call across the air, the sound flat and uninterested, as if made only to hear itself. It fades before you swallow. The swallow itself is an event you notice in layers, the cool of the fish as it enters, the moment of warmth at the back of the throat, the faint ache in the jaw, relaxing for just long enough to reset itself. The rope above you stirs, fibers rasping against each other like a brush drawn once across rough wood. The post at your shoulder feels the motion but does not share it, remaining solid against your weight. You press the heel of your hand into it briefly, as though anchoring yourself to its stillness. The next strip comes from nearer the belly. The texture there is smoother, finer, the flesh paler where the salt has lived deeper in its lines. It peels away almost willingly, curling in your fingers. You straighten it, fold it twice, and chew with slow, deliberate presses. Each bite releases more of that familiar salt, not as sharp as the tail pieces, but steady, dependable. You finish it and add a small bone to the growing pile by your boot, hearing the faintest tick as it finds its place among the others. The pile has spread outward slightly, a fan of pale arcs and slivers that seem to arrange themselves without your help. You glance at it now and then, not to check, but simply to notice how time has arranged itself at your feet. A shadow crosses the rack's entrance, slender, quick, and gone before you can attach it to anything. Perhaps another person moving between the rows, perhaps nothing at all. The light inside the shelter shifts only slightly, returning to its soft gray, almost immediately. Wind pushes at the racks again, enough to make the hanging fish sway in small arcs. Their tails tap gently against the posts, a slow, irregular percussion that joins the faint hum of the ropes. You listen without trying to count, letting the rhythm find its own way. You work another piece free from the back, this one thicker and more stubborn. It yields after a little coaxing, coming away in a single long ribbon that folds easily in your hands. You bring it to your mouth, chew slowly, and let the salt spread in its own time. The jaw moves without hurry. The swallow comes without effort. The rope above turns once more, a small creak marking the end of its motion. You imagine the knot tightening against itself in the wind, holding fast as it has for so many days. Your hands return to the fish without thought, seeking the next seam and finding it exactly where you expect. The sea makes itself known again faint, even a patient wash of water on stone. It is not a call, not a demand, just a reminder that the world outside the racks is still moving, even if you are not. You keep the sound close while you take the next bite, letting the rhythm of waves and the rhythm of chewing become the same. The head of the fish grows more prominent as the middle thins. You rest it briefly on the bench beside you, stretching your fingers inside your sleeves before returning to the work. Your palms are dry from the salt, your fingertips polished by handling, your wrists warm from the brief shelter of fabric. Another strip, another chew, another slow swallow. The bones at your feet wait quietly for the next addition. The racks above answer the wind in low, unchanging tones. The day does not press forward. It simply remains, and you remain with it. You ease the fish into the crook of your left arm and step from the shelter toward the open mouth of the racks. The air outside meets you with a quieter kind of cold, less concentrated than under the beams, more generous across the face. Frost holds the ground in a thin glitter that the clouded light does not bother to brighten. The path ahead looks plain and exact, every footprint kept neat by the temperature that refuses to let edges blur. You walk only a few paces and sit again on the lower bench that faces the shore. The wood is colder here, the seat flatter, the memory of other bodies less carved into it. You set the fish across your laphead to the left, tail to the right, and let your gaze lift past the racks to the horizon. It is a narrow, almost imaginary line where sea and sky agree to stop arguing. Gray meets gray. The difference is a matter of texture rather than color. The sea carries movement in its gray. The sky smooths it away. You hold still and let that thin boundary occupy your attention. The water does not crash so much as arrive, fold itself along the unseen stones, and depart with the restraint that belongs to a cold season. A gull passes through the line you are watching and fails to break it. The horizon repairs itself at once, as if it never admitted the interruption. Your hands return to the work without drawing your eyes down. You pinch a strip from the fish by feel, raise it, and fold it once. The first touch of salt keeps you in the present as surely as the horizon keeps the sea in its proper place. You chew with the steady patience that the morning has assigned you. The swallow warms a path that has been used often enough today to know its duty. A wind slides along the shore and reaches you as a simple instruction. Breathe this way, not that. You obey without changing your posture, adjusting only the pace of your lungs. The racks behind you answer with their small vocabulary: rope hush, tail tap, peg murmur sounds that have learned to stand beside the wider hush of water without competing. You draw another piece from the flank. The strip gives immediately, unwilling to perform complexity with the horizon watching. You place it on your tongue whole and attend to the line where sea meets sky. For a moment the sea grows slightly darker, as though someone has pressed a thumb beneath the surface to test its give, then lets the force go, and the gray evens out again. Your jaw begins its quiet math. Press, rest, press, until texture agrees to release itself. Closer at hand, the frost has lined the bench's edge in white. You set the fish down for an instant and rub 2 fingers along that crust. It squeaks faintly, then collapses under your touch and vanishes into the grain. You bring your fingers to your sleeve and leave a darker streak there. One more line drawn into a fabric that already speaks in small histories. The horizon holds. It is not a promise, not a prophecy, simply a fact that organizes the space in front of you. You watch a narrow band of lighter gray travel along it from left to right, easy as a thought, indifferent to your attention. You let that line pass and do not follow it. The morning moves enough on its own. You have fish to finish. You take a bite from the tail. This part asks for more jaw and gets it. The ache rises in the hinge where it lives now, but the ache is orderly. It does not ask for permission or apology. You rub the spot with 2 knuckles and keep chewing. When the piece lies thin on your tongue, the swallow comes, and with it the small, reliable warmth that has threaded the day together from the inside. A child's laugh appears somewhere behind the racks, travels into the open, and becomes very small out here by the horizon. It is not a new sound. It is the same one you heard earlier, thinned by distance and the bigger voice of water. You smile with the inside of your mouth, the only kind of smile that suits the bench and the cold. A low bird moves parallel to the shoreline, beating its wings as if counting. It passes out of your notice when the sea lifts a little along the stones, and then sets itself down again, exactly where it was. The sky does not commit to brightening or dimming. You respect the indecision. Mornings are allowed to remain undecided, especially the ones that require this much waiting from everything. You lift the fish and test the back with your thumb. The seam you opened earlier has kept its manners. It offers you a neat beginning, and you accept. The strip peels back like a ribbon freed from a knot, curling in your fingers before you smooth it flat. You chew with your eyes still on the horizon. The taste does not change. The gray does not change. You are not looking for change. You are looking, and that is enough. The bone pile at your boot has learned the open air and is less fussy about how it lies. A thin shard has separated itself from the rest and points toward the sea as if it had an opinion. You add a new piece, and the old shard rolls once to make room, offering no sound beyond the idea of sound. The frost nearest your boot shows where you pressed last time you stood. The prints fit yours still. You return your attention to the line ahead. If you look too hard, the horizon steps back and becomes 2 lines, one for sky, one for sea. If you soften your gaze, it becomes one again, as if it remembers that it is easier to be single when the air is this cold. You choose the single. The breath you let out makes a pale veil that covers the view for a moment and then tears itself into nothing. Another strip, this one narrower, draws free from the belly side with very little argument. You fold it twice and press it against your tongue so the salt has to walk around before it can enter. The jaw takes 2 patient turns and then pauses. You hold the piece until it understands, then swallow and feel the familiar thread run downward. You sit forward a fraction, elbows on knees, fish resting across your thighs. The horizon has broadened in your sight by that much. The gray nearest the sea leans faintly toward blue, or pretends to, then returns to gray before you can agree with it. Your eyes water from the wind and clear themselves on their own. You wipe nothing away. This kind of clarity belongs to the day more than to you. The rack speaks softly behind you. A knot reconsiders and settles. A beam answers with a low, pleased note as the load redistributes by a finger's width. The shore adopts a more audible shush for a few breaths, then moderates itself. All of it is small, and therefore perfect. You lift the fish and weigh it. Lighter, honest about it. The head is more architecture than food now. The tail cooperative. The middle generous enough to justify staying here a while longer. You take a longer strip and divide it with your thumb, keeping 1/2 for the mouth and 1 for the hand. The half you eat is curtained in a brightness of salt that arrives and leaves with good manners. The half you keep warm slightly against your palm, you let it, then finish it in 3 quiet bites. The horizon does nothing extraordinary in return. It remains a rule, not a lesson. You thank it without saying so, by pressing your breath into the air more gently and keeping your shoulders low. You smooth the remaining flank with your thumb. The ridges answer like familiar words, here, here, and here. You follow the middle one, open a seam, and free a strip that prefers to curl. You straighten it, you fold it, you chew. The world continues to agree with itself. For a while you let the sea speak, and do not listen for meaning. Sound arrives and leaves like the gull you can no longer see. Your hands keep their grammar. Head, left, tail right, thumb press, lift, fold, mouth, patience, swallow. The bench makes room for the weight you have become. The frost accepts the heat you have given it from your boots. The day moves 1 more quiet notch that only the horizon cares to record. When you finally lower your gaze from that thin, pale line, the fish looks back like a problem half solved, and in no danger of being rushed. You sit straighter, Breathe once for warmth and once for steadiness, and set your thumb to the next place the wind forgot. The seam answers. The racks murmur their assurance. The sea holds its distance and gives you the sound you need to do the next small thing. You turn the fish so the head rests toward you, the eye socket angled just enough to catch a faint edge of light. The hollow there is darker than the rest of the skin, a place the salt has worked differently, leaving a matte circle inside the sheen. Your thumb presses lightly against the temple, feeling the give of what has been dried into permanence. From this angle, the spine line runs straight toward your far wrist. You follow it with the tip of your finger until it reaches the tail. The ridges under your touch feel almost like the knots in old rope, small, regular, each one in its proper place. You pinch along the seam beside that line and lift another strip, the sound quiet and even. It comes free in a slow curve, its pale underside catching the gray light before you fold it twice and bring it to your mouth. The first press of teeth draws out the salt, not in a rush, but in a slow tide that you meet without resistance. The wind outside shifts slightly, no longer pressing at your side but leaning more toward your back. It carries the smell of the rack's wood worn smooth, rope aged to a flat dryness, fish that has given its scent over to the air until the air carries it for miles. You swallow and feel that scent inside you now, the taste and smell agreeing for once on the shape of the day. You lay the fish back in your lap, the head angled just far enough for the jawbone to show under the skin. There is a shallow curve there where you can rest your finger without effort. You leave it there for a breath, feeling the faint cool that the air insists upon. From the belly side, you work a thinner piece, one that peels easily but tries to break before it reaches your hand. You coax it the rest of the way and let it fall lightly into your palm. It is softer here, less inclined to chew for long. You take smaller bites, letting each dissolve before you press for the next. The salt lingers longer in these pieces, catching at the edges of your tongue before it fades. The bone pile near your boot has begun to lean, one long piece tilting against the rest, as though looking for a way to leave. You adjust it without thought, tucking it back into place with the edge of another shard. The sound is small but precise, another mark in the record of the morning's work. Above you, a rope groans once against its post, a reminder that the racks still carry weight overhead. The fish sway lightly in the breeze, their tails tracing slow arcs in the air. You look up just long enough to catch the motion, then return to the work in your lap. You pull from the tail this time, the strip coming away with more resistance. It feels different, denser, almost stubborn. You take it in your teeth and work through the fibers until they agree to separate. The salt here is sharper, and it stays with you past the swallow, a thin heat in the mouth that you smooth away with your tongue. The sea's voice is softer now, the tide further out. It sounds less like a wave and more like water, thinking about where it will go next. You listen without expecting an answer. The sky above the racks has not brightened or dimmed. It holds steady, as if unwilling to interfere with what you're doing. You set the fish down for a moment and flex your fingers. The skin along the tips feels polished from handling the salted flesh. The nails pale from the cold. You press your hands together inside your sleeves until the heat begins to return, then bring them out again and take up the fish as though no pause had passed. The next strip comes easily, a long ribbon that folds neatly before you place it in your mouth. You chew slowly, the sound of your own jaw small beside the larger quiet of the racks on the shore. The swallow comes, and with it the same brief warmth that has been threading the hours together. The head now seems heavier than the tail, a sign that you've taken enough from the back to change its balance. You rest it carefully on your knee, the tail angled toward the frost-dusted ground, and wait for the next seam to present itself. When it does, you follow it without hurry, lifting another piece, folding, chewing, swallowing. The morning accepts each action without comment, and you let it, knowing there is still more to do before the day is finished. You keep the fish steady where it lies, head toward your knee, tail breathing its small arc toward the ground. The balance has changed again, light collecting in the middle, while the head and tail become more like signs than like food. You roll your shoulders once, a small correction against the cold that has crept into your back. The bench receives the motion and answers with a shallow creak, then goes quiet, having said what it needed to say. You press your thumb lightly along the ridge where the spine once lived and feel the seam announce itself with a papery give. It is not a new seam, just a patient one you have been saving for this part of the morning. The strip rises, pale under the gray light, and you hold it in 2 fingers for a breath before you commit. The salt is already in the air between you and the strip. Taking it into your mouth is only a formality, like signing a name beneath a document you have been reading all your life. The first press of your teeth meets a resistance you recognize stiff at the edge, then willing in the core. You let your tongue do the early work, flattening what it can before the jaw takes over. There is no rush left in you. If the day wanted hurry, it would have asked for it at dawn. Now it prefers completion. You give it what it prefers. Each chew is measured. Press, rest, press. The pattern you have carried through hours until it feels less like a choice and more like breath. The wind is quieted to a careful hand that moves the racks without insisting. The fish above you answer in small approvals, tail taps that touch wood and withdraw, rope that speaks in half syllables and then declines to continue. Out beyond the last row, the shore sounds like a thought almost formed and then allowed to drift away. You swallow and feel the thread of warmth draw a line inside you that your chest recognizes and keeps. Another strip waits where your thumb has left its certainty. You lift it and fold it once, making a deliberate obstacle for your mouth, a way to keep the last of this outdoor meal at the pace you set for the first. The piece sits on your tongue while the salt makes its introduction in full. Not sharp now, but complete, an entire tide reduced to a manageable distance. Your jaw tends, not eager, not reluctant, only faithful. When you swallow, the warmth returns, softer than before, as if it also recognizes that the work is nearing its reasonable end. A small patch of light loosens in the clouds and moves across the racks. It gives every edge a momentary rimhorn cup, benchboard, the pale curl of dried skin at the corner of your seat. The glow finds the bone pile by your boot and turns it into a shallow bowl of dull stars. You place a new shard there, a sliver from near the head, and watch the old pieces settle to make room for the new without complaint. The sound they make is a courtesy more than a noise, a polite tick that might merely be your fingers deciding to hear it. You lift the fish and consider the head. What remains is architecture, jaw, temple, the clean curve where I once sat. You tilt it so the hollow faces the open air, and the air looks back with its usual gray. From the tail, you take a narrow ribbon, dark along one margin, pale along the other. It asks more of your jaw, so you slow it down again, fold once, then again, and let the tongue insist on patience before the teeth are invited. This is the bite that tells the mouth it has done enough for a while. You honor it by chewing until the resistance dwindles to memory. Across the rack's mouth, 2 gulls pass low, their wings describing shallow arcs, as if measuring whether the morning has changed. It has not. They accept the answer and travel on. You press your lower lip with the edge of your sleeve to gather the faint crust the salt has left there. The wool keeps the mark and takes no offense. You set the fish across both knees and make a small inventory without numbers. The fan of skin curls at the bench corner, the quiet map of bones at your boot, the horn cup resting where bench meets post, the modest frost that has survived your warmth. You slide your hands into your sleeves, palm to palm, and hold them there until heat pools in the hollow where wrist meets thumb. When you bring them out, your breath makes 2 small ghosts that vanish before they are anything at all. There is a last outside bite to be taken, the one that tidies the work you can do in the wind. You find it not by sight, but by touch, the tidy seam just behind the head's heavy line. Your thumbnail walks under it, your fingers lift, and a clean strip rises with no theatrics. You do not fold this one. You place it on your tongue in a single length, as if to give the morning back its own simplicity. Salt arrives, certain and familiar. The fibers remember how to separate without being told. Your jaw answers once, twice, a third time, each motion smaller than the last. The swallow is quiet and entire. When it is gone, you keep your mouth closed for a few breaths, not to hoard the taste, but to let the body believe it has been well treated. Your hands go still on the fish. The bench gives a small sigh under your changed weight, as if it had been waiting for this pause. Out beyond the racks, the water hushes itself to a lower register, and the wind decides to mind its business elsewhere for a minute. The shelter's entrance frames a square of plain weather that could belong to any day. You look down at what remains and see the next stage of the work, the kind that belongs nearer a hearth than to open air. The flesh that is left will answer better to a little warmth, and your jaw, though faithful, has earned a truce. You slide your palm under the head and lift, and the fish understands the new purpose in your hands. It bends accordingly, not oppositional now, but cooperative, reduced to what you can carry without thinking. Before you stand, you adjust two bones that have leaned apart from the rest. They settle where you place them. The pile is not neat, only honest. You draw the back of your knuckles along the bench to read the grain one more time, and the wood answers with a mild rasp that belongs to you and to anyone else who has sat here doing this same simple thing. You breathe in the rack smell, as if it were a blessing, wood and rope and the long patience of fish given to wind. The breath leaves you longer than it entered. The air returns to its work, which is to keep everything exactly where it is, until you choose to move. You choose to finish the outdoor part of the day. You press your palm once more along the fish's back, not to find a seam this time, but to say you know it. Then you gather yourself to stand, the bench releasing your shape, the frost receiving your boots, the morning sliding one small notch as if to make room for you to pass. You do not look back at the place you occupied. The impression you left is not for seeing. It lives in the small changes, the darker patch on the wool, where you wipe your lip, the hollow where bones have collected, the quiet ache seated in your jaw like a satisfied guest. You hold the fish in the crook of your arm, the tail pointing toward the path, the head folded against your palm. The racks speak one last line in rope and wood. Nothing urgent, nothing new. You answer by stepping into the open air, carrying the day's work with the steadiness it has earned. You draw the fish into the crook of your arm and step away from the bench, giving the place back to the wind. Frost answers your first two steps with that soft, brittle music it keeps for departures. You pause only long enough to regard the horn cup, the curled skins, the pale scatter where your boot had been. Nothing asks tidying. The morning will do what mornings do. You turn toward the gap between racks, then think better of starting with cold hands. You lay the fish on the bench and slide your palms into your sleeves, trapping heat where wrist meets pulse. When your fingers return to the air, a brief steam lifts and vanishes. You rub your thumb pads together until grip replaces polish. Then kneel to open the cloth. You brought a square of tight-woven linen that knows the smell of salt as well as any garment you own. The cloth unfolds with a quiet sigh. You drape it so its corners hang like calm flags. Threads run straight, edges hold their hem. The color is the not quite white of washing and days near smoke. You test the fabric with a small tug along warp and weft. It answers with the modest resistance that says it will keep faith. You set the fish in the center, head to the left, tail to the right, the old grammar of your hands. The linen darkens where salt clings to the skin. You press your palm once along the back, not to find a seam, but to thank the morning for what it gave and took. You fold the lower edge up over the belly, then bring the upper edge down to meet it. A clean overlap, no corner exposed. Your left hand holds the folds while your right fetches a narrow wool tape from your belt, a length plucked from an old hem and taught to be a tie. You slide the first turn under the bundle and draw it snug without pinching. The fish yields a fraction and then holds. The second turn crosses the first, a plain X that keeps things from arguing. You tie once, then again, flattening the knot so it sits low and obedient. The bundle is square enough to behave, round enough to fit the crook of an arm without complaint. Before you lift it, you press the cloth along the head's outline, easing linen into the hollows where jaw and temple make their small architecture. A bundle that knows its shape rides quieter. You turn it over once. No loose edge, no impatient corner, no salt ready to sting a wrist later. You slide your palm under and lift. The weight has become civil now that the spine is gone and the meat arranged. It sits against your forearm as if it had always meant to travel this way. The knot rests in the hollow where thumb joins palm and asks for no attention. A breath of wind comes through the racks and proves the wrapping by trying to take what it cannot. The cloth holds. The tape keeps its opinion to itself. You tilt the bundle once, testing it against the angle of walking. It stays where you put it. You glance at the bench long enough to memorize the order. skins, cup, bones arranged by time rather than tidiness. Wind will erase what needs erasing. The rest can belong to the day. At the path's mouth, you test the balance a final time. The cloth edge kisses your wrist. The weight leans inward, not out. You pull the cloak across your chest so the wool roofs the bundle without touching it. The racks whisper behind you in rope and wood, approving without ceremony. You take 3 steps and stop to retie the tape, not because it is loose, but because a second knot is the difference between thinking about a bundle and forgetting it. You make the turn, tuck the tail, press your thumb over the knot until your heat passes into the wool. The knot becomes quiet. The ground accepts your boots with a faint crunch of frost considering a thaw. Footprints from earlier stretch ahead. A corridor of your own making the air has not troubled. You set the bundle higher in the crook of your arm and begin down that script, reading each step by feel. The cloth warms where it touches you. The fish cools where it meets the morning. Both agree to travel together. A low gust presses from the side. You turn your body half a degree into it, letting cloak and shoulder take the attention, while the bundle rides in the lee. The sea's voice is only a rumor now, promising the hearth will speak the rest when you arrive. You pause and pass the bundle to your other arm, to be fair to the first. The knot presents itself in the new hand exactly as it should, a handle in a mirror. You flex the fingers that have carried since the bench and feel the ache there lighten. The wrapped fish settles again. A final check. Cloth flat, corners under, tape crossed and quiet, weight honest. You lift your chin to taste the air salt still, cold still, a faint thread of peat from a chimney already awake. That line draws between here and there. You set your boots to it. The racks speak one last sentence in creak and hush, and you answer by walking, the bundle sure against your forearm. You do not look down to admire the wrapping. Good work carries itself. You keep your breath steady, your pace even, your free hand tucked into your sleeve where warmth collects like small coins. The path rises by a palm's width, and the bundle shifts that same palm's width toward your elbow. You adjust without thinking and go on. By the time you clear the last posts, the wind has settled into a simple companion, and the ground has taken the story of your footsteps. You aim for the darker stripe that leads toward the longhouse, a road written by habit and weather. You add your name with each step, the bundle riding quiet, the linen breathing its clean, salted breath into the fold of your cloak. There is nothing left to do out here but carry what you have wrapped. You let the land do the rest shore at your back, racks fading to a frame, and ahead, the sure suggestion of coals. The bundle is light enough for patience and heavy enough for purpose. You keep it close and keep going. The path narrows between 2 low ridges of frost-cured grass, their tips bending as the wind combs them in slow passes. You shift the bundle slightly inward, letting your forearm press it against the ribs so it moves with you instead of after you. The cloth has taken on a faint warmth now, not enough to change the fish inside, just enough to make your hold easier. You keep your eyes low, tracing the trail where your own prints from earlier darken the white crust. The frost holds them faithfully heel, arch, toe, each step still telling the direction and the weight of the person who made them. You add to the story with fresh marks, the right boot showing a little more pressure than the left, the bundle having drawn your balance in its direction. The ridges open into a small flat where tufts of moss break through the thin snow. You step carefully between them, not because they need protecting, but because the uneven ground will test the hold on your bundle. The cloth remains closed. The knot lies where you set it. The tail of the tape sways once with your stride, and then stills. From the east comes a low call, human this time, carried on the wind until it loses most of its words. You do not answer. The voice is not asking for you. It is simply adding itself to the morning. You tilt your head slightly to hear it fade, then return your eyes to the ground ahead. The trail begins a shallow climb toward the rise where the longhouse waits. The slope is steady, not steep, but the added weight in your arm makes itself known. You ease the bundle into the other arm again, feeling the pleasant release of muscles that have carried since the last change. The cloth is still warm where it was pressed to you, the warmth fading slowly into the air. You draw your free hand inside your sleeve and flex the fingers once, twice, until the stiffness answers with small cracks in the joints. The smell of the wrapped fish sits lightly between the folds of your cloak's salt, dryness, a faint memory of the rack's wind. It stays close, as if it knows the walk is nearly over. Halfway up the slope, the longhouse roofline appears, low and dark against the pale sky. Smoke slips from the vent in a narrow ribbon, the peat's scent finding you a breath before the sight did. You imagine the warmth inside, not as a rush, but as a quiet pool you will step into. The bundle will change there too, softening in the air before the fire. You adjust the knot with your thumb, not because it needs it, but because the gesture confirms the bundle's presence without looking. The tape feels slightly rougher now, as if the wool has noticed the day's use. The linen beneath stays smooth, edges holding their fold, corners still hidden. The slope eases into level ground again. Here the snow is thinner, the earth dark where wind has pushed the crust aside. The sound of your boots changes, less crunch, more muted thud. You take the change in stride, the bundle shifting only to match the rhythm. At the edge of the yard, you slow, not from weariness, but to give the moment its length. The fence posts lean under their weight of frost, the gate standing open in a way that says, no one has needed to close it today. You pass through without touching it, the wood keeping its silence. The packed earth of the yard receives your steps without speaking back. The smoke is stronger now, richer, the smell of a hearth that has been kept since before dawn. You turn your body so the wind takes the smell toward you, a small offering before the door. The longhouse stands as it always has, timbers dark, roof thatched and patient, door unhurried to open or close. You approach with the bundle close to your chest now, one hand under, one hand over, the knot pressed into your palm. The cloth's breath is your own breath now, both touched by the same air. At the threshold you stop, letting the outside rest on you for one last moment. The frost underfoot has thinned to bare ground, the boards of the step worn smooth by years of boots and bundles like yours. You shift the weight once more, setting the fish to ride in the arm nearest the wall. The other hand lifts to the latch. The door yields with a low wood-on-wood murmur, letting out a sigh of warm air that curls around your face and into your sleeves. The room beyond is dim, its edges holding still until your eyes invite them forward. You step through, bringing the cold and the bundle with you, the morning waiting just outside for you to return when it's ready. The door closes behind you with a muted thump, sealing the thin seam of light from outside. The air inside is warmer, thick with the smell of peat smoke, dry wood, and the faint sweetness of something left simmering in the pot. Your eyes take a moment to loosen from the pale light of the frost, adjusting to the soft amber that lingers along the walls and roof beams. You shift the bundle against your ribs, letting it rest while your shoulders ease from the stiffness of the wind. The weight feels different here, less urgent, more at ease, like it knows the work of the morning is behind it. You cross the worn plank floor toward the hearth, each board sounding a different note beneath your boots. At the center, the fire works slowly, coals tucked deep and red, flames no higher than a hand. They move without hurry, licking along the edge of a log and drawing its resin scent into the air. The heat reaches you in small waves, touching your knuckles first, then seeping through the cloth of your cloak. You kneel beside it and set the bundle carefully on a low bench, the knot still facing upward, the linen drinking in the warmth. Your hands hover above the coals for a long moment, the skin prickling as sensation returns. You spread your fingers to let the heat pass between them, then turn your palms down toward the hearthstones. The warmth pools there, a deep and steady comfort after the clean bite of the frost. Beside the fire is a flat plank laid across two stones, the place where bundles like yours wait before being opened. You lift the fish from the bench and set it there, the cloth whispering as it shifts. A faint puff of salt air escapes from the folds, caught for a moment in the glow before it is carried upward by the heat. You take a seat on the low stool near the wall, the wood worn smooth where countless hours have been passed in this exact way. From here, you can see the line of the bundle, the way the wool tape crosses and the linen folds hold their shape. You can also see how the edges are softening in the warmth, corners relaxing, fibers losing the stiffness the wind had given them. For now, you leave it untouched. The fish has its own pace when it comes to yielding to the hearth's influence. You rest your elbows on your knees and listen to the quiet exchanges in the room, the slow exhale of a log settling into coals, the faint shifting of the thatch overhead as it responds to a gentler wind than the one outside, the occasional tap of something cooling on the far side of the room. You glance once at the pot hanging over the lower flame. Its lid wears a thin shine of steam, trembling now and then when the contents turn themselves over. The smell is muted by the dried fish's salt that still lives in your nose, but there is a comfort in knowing the two will meet later. The bundle shifts slightly as the cloth loosens a fraction more, the tape's knot settling lower into the weave. You resist the urge to open it too soon. The fish needs to shed the edge of the cold before it will eat properly. The mouth will thank the patience later. You keep your hands folded, watching the small changes, a darker line appearing along one fold, where moisture has found its way from inside, a rounded curve in the cloth where the head presses from beneath. The warmth in the room gathers around you like water filling a basin. You pull your cloak looser at the neck to let it in. The air here carries no frost. It moves slowly enough to be felt as weight rather than motion. Your shoulders drop another measure. Your jaw finds its place without asking. From outside, muted by timber and turf, comes the thinnest note of the wind moving past the gable. It doesn't enter, but its presence is enough to remind you of the path and the racks and the quiet bench you left behind. You picture them as they were when you stepped away. Nothing in need of tending, nothing in need of words. You lean forward once to check the cloth, running a finger along the fold nearest the head. Warm now, pliant but still dry. This is the stage where the wrapping feels almost alive again, having given up the stiffness that comes from long hours in open air. You draw your hand back and settle into the stool once more, letting the warmth work at the bundle in its own manner. The coals deepen to a darker red, their heat a low hum in the room. The fish rests. You rest. The air holds still, content to watch you both without interference. You untie the wool tape when the knot feels ready to remember nothing. It loosens with a quiet give, no drama, just material deciding to be helpful. The linen opens under your hands like a slow breath, corner to corner, edges laying back in patient triangles until the fish looks out at the room without its winter posture. The hearth has already begun its gentle work. What was tight now suggests pliancy. What was stiff now implies something almost like cooperation. You slide your palms beneath the cloth, feeling the warmth that has seeped into it, and turn a narrow flank toward the fire's orange. The skin shows a mild sheen that wasn't there at the rack's heat gathering in places the wind would never reach. You do not crowd the coals. You set the fish nearer the rim of warmth rather than its center. Patience is a tool you use because it is never broken on you. The room gives you the sound inventory you expect. A soft settling in the rafters, the pot's lid ticking when it remembers to, the peat's low breath as it chooses where to glow next. Your jaw thanks the pause by ceasing its steady testimony. You flex it once, twice, careful to move the hinge only as far as it wishes. Today has been full of cooperation. No reason to ruin the theme. You test a corner of flesh with your fingertip. The surface yields like good cloth, neither flabby nor stubborn. There is a richer scent, now still salt, but warmed into roundness, the sharpness traded for something that remembers fat and smoke, without offering either in excess. You allow yourself a small, impolite thought. Yes, this will be easier. Your knife lives under its bone handle at your hip. You draw it and lay the blades flat along the fish, as if taking its temperature. The steel keeps quiet, which is all you asked of it. When you do cut, you do not saw. You persuade. The tip finds the seam you started outdoors, and the flesh opens in a neat ribbon that curls once in relief and then lies still across the linen. You fold the ribbon once, then again not out of ceremony, but to let the mouth go slower than the heat invites. The first bite is different in the same way a calm room is different from a calm field. The salt arrives without the slap of wind behind it. The fibers give with a humility that belongs to the hearth. Your tongue does the early part, pressing and spreading. Your teeth finish with less effort than they asked of you all morning. It would be easy to hurry now. You do not. Warmth deserves the same respect as cold. You lay the blade down and use your thumb to open another small seam. The flesh warms your fingertip in a way that makes the day sound far away. No gulls here, no rope, no wooden syllables from posts. Only the tick of heat on stone and the quiet apology your knuckles make as blood returns fully to them. You take another bite and stay seated in the same patience. The swallow sets a gentler line inside the chest, like a thought that knows it won't be interrupted. You hold the fish closer to the air above the coals, not close enough to scold it, just near enough that the surface learns every cheap trick the fire knows about comfort. The linen darkens slightly where a thin drop runs and stops. You catch it with the edge of cloth and turn the fish so the other side remembers how to be food. This is the part the morning cannot handle. The slow unknotting of toughness until the jaw and the meat decide to be equals. The pot sighs again, and a low sound comes from the far corner aboard, taking its own inventory and finding nothing worth mentioning. You let your eyes blur toward the fire and keep the edge of the fish inside your sharp vision. A strip lifts more willingly now, and you do not even need the blade. Fingertips are enough. You place the strip on your tongue hole, hold it there, and allow the heat to finish its lecture. When you chew, the motion is almost decorative. The work has already been done by air and ember. You pause to take stock. The head is architecture still, but friendlier about it. The tail has lost its rigid opinions. The center, where you have been working, is openly in favor of your plan. You cut a ribbon longer than the last and divide it with your thumb. One half goes to the mouth, the other waits on the cloth like a promise you are fully able to keep. Both halves seem happy with the arrangement. You wipe your lower lip with the inside of your sleeve and feel the wool give back the day's history. Salt, smoke, faint fish written in a language only you will read later when you put the garment on again and smell it remembering you. The fire gives you a larger breath of heat, as if it noticed your small account of gratitude and wants to close the ledger with a neat sum. You accept the extra degree, as if it had been your idea. Another piece, thicker, taken from near the ridge where the spine once kept order. It tears clean in the new warmth. You chew with a rhythm that has slipped into something like ease. The ache at the hinge stands back, hands on hips, satisfied to supervise. The swallow is lazy and exact. Your chest acknowledges it with a private nod. You turn the fish a final time and let the far edge face the fire. A single snap comes from the wood, then a quiet rain of sparks that rise and die short of the linen. You move nothing. The room manages its own safety, the way rooms do when they have known this dance longer than you. The flame settles, the coals remember their hum, and the fish remembers how to be kind. You take what you would call the evening's last outdoor strip, if there were such a category indoors, a piece that represents the day without bragging about it. It tastes like the racks, softened by the hearth, like the shore, moderated by walls, like patience finalized. You let it sit a second longer than you need to an economical luxury, and then finish it without remark. You close the linen again, not tight, just enough to keep the heat where it is useful. The tape lies across the bundle without a knot, ready to be nothing more than a reminder. You draw the fish a handspan back from the hearth and set it down on the waiting plank. It rests there with the confidence of food that knows it has won. You sit back on the stool and let your hands be empty. The room accepts the change in you without celebration. The pot ticks, the peat breathes, the roof says nothing. Your mouth is quiet, your jaw relieved, your shoulders satisfied. The day outside continues, you suppose, but it is no longer your business. In a while, you will lift the linen again and finish what remains soft as dusk, simple as breath. For now, you let the new softness drift through the air between you and the hearth, and you listen to nothing in particular while it does. You leave the bundle half open on the plank, letting the warm air settle in without hurrying it further. The cloth has taken on a deeper, salt-shadowed tone where the fish rests, and the edges curl just slightly, as if they're leaning in to listen to the coals. You lean back on the stool and allow your elbows to slide down to your knees, body folding into the kind of posture you take only when you are alone with your work and its rewards. The fire is steady now, no great flames, no new logs, only the low conversation of embers and an occasional faint lick of light where resin meets heat. You could reach forward and stir it, but there's no reason. It's doing exactly what you need, keeping the fish warm without asking for your attention. You turn your head toward the door, not expecting anyone, just marking its place in the room. A thin strip of daylight seeps in around the edges, but it's a dull winter light, the kind that adds no warmth, only a pale reminder of the frost still holding outside. You feel it on your cheek in the faintest draft, and tuck the edge of your cloak tighter around you. Your eyes return to the bundle. The linen now holds a shape molded by both fish and heat, a softened rise where the backbone lies, a gentle slope toward the tail end. The tape rests loosely across it, no longer a tie, but a mark of where your work began this morning. You reach forward, thumb brushing the fold nearest the head, and it answers with a subtle give under your touch. This is the moment you've been waiting for. You draw the fish free from its wrapper and lay it directly on the plank, skin side down, so the warmth from the wood can join the fire's work. The skin is no longer taut. It has relaxed into fine ripples, like the surface of a tide pool at dusk. You separate a strip near the tail with nothing more than your fingers, no knife, no force, and place it on your tongue. The bite is almost silent in your mouth. The salt is still there, but now it has depth, less of the sea's sharp slap, more of its slow ebb. The flesh gives easily, yielding to teeth without complaint. You close your eyes to keep the sound of the room near you, and chew until even the small edges have given up their texture. The swallow is unremarkable in the best possible way, carrying only warmth downward. Another strip comes away even easier. This one you hold in your fingers for a moment before eating, feeling the fine separation of fibers under the pads of your thumb and forefinger. You turn it over once, watching the way the light from the fire runs across the pale surface, then fold it in half and place it in your mouth. The coals answer with a sigh. You let the heat on your face match the slow fade of salt across your tongue. The rest of the fish sits patient, as if it understands there's no need to finish quickly. You take one more bite, then set the fish back onto the cloth, folding the linen loosely around it again. Your hands rest in your lap now, empty, but not idle. The smell of the hearth has settled into your sleeves, mingling with the faint brine of the fish. The warmth on your face deepens in the absence of motion. You listen to the small notes of the room, the shifting of peat, the distant creak of the roof, the low hum of the wind still circling outside. You glance toward the door again. The light there has thinned, meaning the day is passing, but the change brings no rush. There is nowhere to go, nothing urgent to be done. The fish will wait, the fire will wait, the air will wait. You let your gaze fall to the bundle once more. It's smaller now, but it still has the quiet dignity of something earned. In a little while, you'll finish it. For now, you just sit with it, in the company of fire and wood, and the kind of silence that feels like it has been here longer than you have. You breathe slowly, matching your rhythm to the steady pulse of the hearth. The fish rests. You rest. And outside, frost keeps its hold on the land without bothering the warm room where you sit. The light outside fades toward a muted gray, its edges softened by the frost that never gave up its hold today. The longhouse keeps its own light, a patient glow from the hearth, its warmth moving without haste across the room. The fish rests where you left it, wrapped in linen, the shape altered slightly by the slow work of heat. The bundle breathes faint salt into the air each time the cloth shifts. Your hands remain still, the fingers resting easily on your knees, the wrists warmed by the fall of your cloak. The sound of the coals is steady small ticks and low breaths, like an old friend speaking just to you. Above, the roof holds the memory of the wind without letting it in, and the walls keep the cold in its place. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to let the room draw closer. The scent of peat, the softened brine of fish, the faint grain of the wood under your boots, all of it settles into a quiet arrangement. There is no urgency here. The frost outside will not lift before morning, and the racks by the shore will stand as you left them. Your breath slows. The air you draw in carries the last of the day's light, and the air you release carries nothing you need to keep. The bundle will still be there when you open your eyes again, still warm, still ready. For now, you stay seated in the low glow, the fire's pulse matching your own. You are in no hurry. Neither is the room. The day has given you enough. The night will take only what you let it. We hope this quiet step into another time has left you feeling rested. If you've enjoyed it, you're welcome to like, share, or leave a gentle note. And if you'd like more slow walks through history, you can subscribe and join us again. End of script. Sweet dreams.